Having picked up the cat in his arms, the boy notices that a huge truck is driving towards him. He thinks to himself that he never expected reincarnation in another world. While the girl watches him from the side and is horrified by what she sees, the guy only thinks, isn't this a preface to those Isekai, and decides everything? What will be as it will be? Sometime later. Another world. The Kingdom of Nirvana. The princess sits at the table and then goes to the window, feeling something strange, and then says that it is her hero. Meanwhile, in the world where the guy almost got hit by a truck, he managed to dodge in time and not hit the guy with the kitten. The girl, seeing his picture, starts calling Yuma. The guy gets up and says he's fine, and so is the cat. Then he asks the cat to be more careful next time. After this incident, they walk down the street. The girl says that although she knew that he could jump anywhere to help in trouble, but this time he went too far. Yumu awkwardly rubs his head and asks her for forgiveness. In his defense, he says that his body moved on its own, and next time he will be more careful. But the girl was not satisfied with this answer, and she continued to scold him. In another world, the maids gather the princess, and one of them tells Alfina that the preparation of the transfer circle has been completed. The princess says that she understands everything and is happy that she will soon see the hero. The maid asks the princess if she is absolutely sure. The girl only asks Bertha not to ask her about this because when they found out that the Demon King would be reborn, as a princess, she must bring the hero, and they also cannot let the high priest wait, so it is time for them to move out. On the wall in the princess's room, there was a lizard with a third eye on its forehead, and it listened to their entire conversation. Meanwhile, the building is closed. Yuma is cleaning the pool and is not surprised that Kana is angry because the bus was really close, and he is very lucky. Returning to work, he notices that all he has to do is drain all the water. But suddenly, he sees a magic circle above his head, and this puts him into a stupor. And from there, comes out the princess with her maid. Alfina says she came for her hero. The guy still doesn't understand what's going on. The maid goes down to the pool, and the girl apologizes for the late introduction, and says that she is the first princess of the Kingdom of Nirvana. But she steps outside the magic circle. She falls into the pool. Yuma immediately runs to her aid and asks if she is okay. But Alfina asks not to worry about her, but she knows martial arts. But as soon as the guy came closer to her, he immediately turned away. The girl did not understand what the problem was and then saw that all her clothes were wet and all her underwear was visible. But then she continues and says that she should introduce herself. But the guy interrupts her, saying that she needs to change clothes because she might catch a cold. And then they begin to argue about what is more important to them. But the maid distracts them from the argument, saying that the princess should change her clothes. After all, it is disrespectful to meet the hero in such a form. And Alfina gives in. After some time, after throwing all her things into the washing machine, she thanks the guy, standing in just a towel, for these wonderful clothes. But the guy tries to explain to her that what he is holding in his hands is clothing, and what she is wearing is just a towel. But Alfin says that she can't bother him anymore, and that's more than enough for her. The guy still can't believe it, but he doesn't argue and decides to ask who they are and where they came from. The girl asks to forgive her rudeness. She is the first princess of the Kingdom of Nirvana, Alfin. The maid says that her name is Berta. Looking away from the girl, the guy says that his name is Tsugari Yuma. All three realize that they have heard about each other somewhere. Then the guy asks why they came here. Alfin explains to him that she must bring the hero with her and asks if he will go with her. Yuma can't believe that he's the one, since he's just an ordinary high school student. Taking out the book, Berta says that all the heroes name exactly this reason, and then shows him a photo of the last hero, and his name was also Tsugari. The guy is not thrilled. Alfin says that this proves that he is a hero, but the guy knows that it is too early to talk about it. But taking Yuma's hand, she says that they need his power, and yet he cannot accept it. Then they decide to prove to him that he is a hero right now, and take out the stone and explain that the one he points to is the true hero. Yuma is a little nervous about this, and the girl says the words, thereby activating the sacred stone. And then she asks the stone to point to the hero, stretching her hands forward. And the light emanating from it falls on Yuma. But now he doesn't care much, because the girl is standing in front of him completely naked, because her towel fell. And Alfin says that he is a real hero and it is not a mistake. The guy asks her to cover up, and a girl asks the maid. There are no mistakes here, but she only asks the princess how she feels. At first, she doesn't understand why this question was asked. And then she sees a towel lying on the floor and becomes very embarrassed, and asks Yuma if he believes her now. He says no, and the most important thing now is for her to get dressed. Alphen begins to prove him wrong, saying that he really is a hero. Unable to argue with her any longer, the guy agrees and asks her to finally get dressed. The girl is glad that he believed her, and at that very moment, she falls into the guy's arms, falling asleep. Yuma says that it would be better to take the princess to the bed right away, and the maid asks the girl to wake up, since the guy is worried about her nakedness. While they were putting the princess to bed, sounds were heard from the bathhouse, which even caused Alfina to wake up. It was the demon queen, and she came to greet the hero personally, and the guy can't understand if he is really being bullied. The girl says that she is pleased to meet you, and her name is Lavinia, and at the moment she is acting as the new demon lord. All three of them had shock on their faces. Then the guy also introduced himself, giving his name, and the princess reacted quite sharply. Blocking them with herself, she blocked the demon lord's path and told her not to approach Yuma. She doesn't understand her indignation, because she is talking to the demon lord. But Alphen tells her that he is not the demon lord. He is a hero. Lavinia starts laughing loudly after hearing this, and then touches the princess and asks her not to seduce her. Alphen at this time tells Yuma to run away from the demon lord, because she is hunting him. The guy just doesn't understand what's going on here. Then he blocks the princess with his body and asks Lavinia to stop. But the demon lord, coming closer to him, asks if he wants to play with her too, and then takes off her top part of her clothes. Yuma asks him not to take off his clothes so recklessly. And yet, the guy tells her that it looks like he really is a hero. Lavinia can't believe it and decides to see for herself. She points a crystal out of nowhere at the guy and the beam hits him, making it clear that he is a demon lord. Lavinia is happy because she was right. Then Alphen also decides to prove his case and takes out the stone. Now 2 beams are aimed at him. Both girls stand confused for a few seconds. Then the demon mistress asks if the princess has a fake by any chance, to which she replies that it is her crystal that is fake. Then they argue for a long time about who will end up going with it, and the guy understands that this will not lead to anything good. After some time, an explosion occurs. The girls are still arguing, but there is almost nothing left of the princess's towel. And then she realizes that if they continue like this, they will not come to an agreement. Lavinia asks what the girl is proposing then. She asks Bertha to hand her sword, calling on the demon queen to fight with swords. But at that moment her towel breaks and she asks to postpone the match a little so she can get dressed. After some time, the girl came out dressed and with a sword in her hands, warning in advance that Lavinia would not leave here invisible and asking her to get ready. Yuma tries to convince Alphen that this place is not suitable for this, but this does not bother either of them, and they begin their duel. The princess strikes first, and Lavinia deftly dodges and says that she must strike harder if she wants to hit her. This pisses her off and she starts attacking her harder. The guy points out that not a single thing in the room has been damaged yet, and Alfina is not an ordinary princess. Yuma then turns to the maid and asks what they should do, but she only asks him to move away, because she needs to capture on her subject all the elegance of the princess's appearance. Meanwhile, Kana is carrying a dish in her hands and heading towards Yume, hoping that he will understand. Entering the building, she asks if there is a guy there, but 2 girls run towards her, literally knocking her off her feet. Yuma catches her in time, as well as her prepared meal, and then asks if Kana is okay. He then tells the girls to go outside. The princess puts all the blame on the demon lord, saying that she is just running away. Yuma thanks Kana for the treat and says that he is busy now and will explain everything to her later. And the girl was left sitting alone on the floor, not understanding anything at all. Meanwhile, the girls continued their fight on the street. Alfina tells Lavinia not to run away, but to start fighting. The demon lord says that then she will take it more seriously and she will use her magic. Only Yuma realizes that this could end badly if they start fighting more seriously. Lavinia says that it's time for them to begin, and now they are flying towards each other, their weapons drawn. But the guy didn't even let them get close to each other. He stood between them and asked them to stop, but he accidentally touched their bodies, which is why soon all the clothes on them simply disappeared, and this was most likely connected with these rays. After all this, both girls simply fell unconscious right on top of Yuma, which really shocked the guy. Meanwhile, Kana goes home and wonders who these two girls are, and then meets Inu on her way. The little girl asks what happened to her, and why she has such a worried expression on her face. The girl tells her that several mysterious foreigners came to Yumu's house, and then she asks the girl if they could be her acquaintances. Ina only tells her that she has a bad feeling about this, which makes Kana quite wary. At the same time, at the Yumov's house, both girls are lying under a blanket. Berta says that they both passed out from fatigue. It's a great relief to the guy, but he still wonders if they've just reached the limit of their endurance. The maid thinks to herself that it is because Yuma destroyed both the princess's power and the demon lord's, and he is truly not an ordinary person. Yuma asks if the girls are really okay, and then Lavinia starts to wake up. She tells him good morning. The guy reminds her that she is completely naked, but she asks him not to worry about it and pressing the necklace on her neck. The clothes themselves appear on her, and now she's dressed. Berta and Yuma stand in shock after what they saw, and Lavinia, turning her attention to the photo from the closet, comes closer to it. The boy explains that this is his mother, and that she died in an accident when he was little. But the mistress only says that she knew her and that she is her aunt. The guy can't believe it. Then it's true that his dad is a former hero, and his mother is a former demon lord. Lavinia says she knows the girl in the picture, and that she is her aunt. The guy can't believe that his parents are a former hero and a former demon lord. Then the boy's father comes into the room, asking what the hole in the ceiling is, and that he doesn't want the old man to yell at him. As soon as he enters, he makes eye contact with the maid, who immediately bows to him in greeting. And he says that the first princess of Marwadia sleeps there. Her name is Alphen. The boy's father can't believe it. Bertha quickly wakes up the princess, saying that she's being disrespectful towards the heroes. And Lavinia shouts that this is the disclosure of Yukate's crime. Father and son stand in shock, but for different reasons. And then the demon mistress runs to hug the guy, and the princess repeats after her, although she doesn't know why she does this. Here the girls start arguing again. Yuma tries to calm them down, and Dad, looking at this picture, praises the guy. But the boy can't stand it and asks his father to explain what's happening, but he's not sure if he should explain it. The girls say they don't care, and Yuma tells him to explain everything. The father can't figure out if he really needs an explanation. Sometime later, the guy holds a book in his hands. Leafing through it, he asks if it is really written based on his father's experience. The father says that this is exactly how it is, and that it is the promised development, but the strangely chosen description and the fact that it was turned into an anime is a result of the real world. The boy begins to understand what is happening and says all the actions out loud. Berta adds that at the very end, his father was absorbed by the Demon King when he killed him. Although she never thought that this could happen, Yuma only says that they were lucky to return to Japan. Otherwise, he would not have been born. The father agrees with him, but then Lavinia joins the conversation and says that the boy's father was having fun with the previous Demon King. He, in turn, does not believe that the king had relatives. The princess says that it is true. If the Demon King is transferred with him, then he could be finished off there, and she doesn't understand why exactly they became a couple. Yuma's father tries to justify himself, but he doesn't do a good job of it. Berta says that if his father was originally in cahoots with the Demon King, then it makes sense, and the man is only surprised by her intelligence and says that he will tell them everything, and this time he will be honest. But they had their own circumstances for this, and sometimes the chosen person has to make a difficult choice. Some time ago, Yuma's father says that the Demon King is his favorite type, and then after playing with her for a while, he left for other women. The boy and the princess sat there, completely shocked by what they had heard. Then Berta asked if what he had said was a pretense. He says yes, because the holy sword was used to pierce the Demon King, and then he ran into the magic circle. And yet, the boy does not believe it, but his father tells him that he had no choice because he could not resist. Yuma tells him that this is not an excuse at all. Then the maid says that in that case this fact should not be known to the people, and the princess should remain silent. Alphen says that she understands and can't believe that the guy has the blood of the Demon King in him. Here the girls again start arguing with each other about who Yuma should go with. Lavinia says that his father chose a curvy figure, which means his son is the same. The princess says that she also has something to be proud of and both girls bare their cleavage, showing it to the guy. Yuma asks them to calm down and then asks Berta to help him. But she doesn't understand only one thing. Alphen's mother had quite a curvy figure from an early age, but he tells them that this does not mean that they are better. Then the princess comes to him and says that her mother's forms could not win. This made the girl very sad. The guy stops the girl, asking them to stop this argument, because he doesn't judge girls only by their cleavage. This makes the princess very happy, and at this time, the father asks Yuma if Kana doesn't have big curves. And he says that lovers of curvy shapes are attracted to good curvy shapes, and this is the psychology of the world. The boy asks his father to be quiet because he is tired of listening to this. Lavinia asks why Alfina doesn't give up and go home, because she must be tired. But the princess asks the demon lord not to distort her name and call her correctly. And in order to fulfill her mother's wish, she cannot give up the Yumeis. His father says that it is not like that at all, and that she was previously in love with a knight. Bertha confirms his words, adding that he was a former knight of the order. Here Yuto, that is, Yuma's father, says that if it comes down to it, she would have been more than happy if she had not been forced to get married. The princess, turning to the protagonist's father, asks him to be silent. Yuto immediately stops speaking. Lavinia reasons that, since Alfina says she's not leaving, what can she do with Yuma to open up to him? The princess is confused by the question asked and does not know what to do. But the demon mistress did not waste time and, coming closer to the guy, began to touch him below the waist, saying that she can do a lot of good for the Yumis. And the guy says that Lavinia has gone too far and it's time to finish. The second girl also starts to cling to the guy. Then the princess speaks, turning to Bertha so that she lets her know what exactly a lot of good means and how exactly to do it. Yuma just shouts that Alfina shouldn't do this to him. Then the princess asks if that means Lavinia is better than her, although the girl hasn't even shown anything yet. Yuma says that's not what he meant at all. The boy's father just watches from the sidelines and says that she has a great character, with all her rivalries and all, and that it could make for a great new story. The princess, almost in tears, asks Bertha to tell her what to do as soon as possible, but the maid only asks not to involve her in this. At this point, Lavinia intervenes in the conversation and tells Alfina that she doesn't need to do this. And then she puts her hand down the guy's pants and declares that Yuma will be hers. The guy stands in complete shock, not knowing what to do. Lavinia asks the boy how he feels. He doesn't understand what she's getting at. Alfine is very stressed out and doesn't know what to do. And then she says that she can't help herself, and she will use her last method, and it is Meruane-style magic. She takes it and also puts her hand in the guy's pants. He can't believe that she just takes it and copies all the movements of the demon mistress. Then the princess asks how about it, because she could do it if she was more serious. But suddenly Alfin felt something and asked Yuma if he had something hidden in his pants. He asks the girl to stop touching him, and Lavinia interrupts, saying that she wants to touch it too. The protagonist is shocked and asks them both to calm down, but Alfin asks her not to pour too much. And Lavinia does the same. Then they both start arguing with each other about whose Yuma is. Once on the floor, the girls continue their argument, and Lavinia says that Alfin won't be able to handle it. The princess is not stopped by this, because if she says so, then she will definitely not give him to the demon lord. The girls begin to argue even more, switching to screaming, and the guy, lying under them, asks them to stop doing this. The boy's father is filming the whole thing on his phone and says his son is just amazing. And Berta is standing there with a video ball and asks Yuto if he's sure he doesn't want to use the 18+ designation here. And then suddenly Kana comes into the room and says that she thought that if these girls stay, they should eat something. But before she can finish speaking, she notices a guy with 2 girls on top of him. He rarely gets up, pushing them aside and trying to explain to Kana that this is all just a misunderstanding. But the girl just starts to get angry and doesn't understand how this can be called a simple misunderstanding. After all, in every sense and purpose, these are some of the best dorayaki. Or to be more precise, Ueno Usamiya dorayaki. At the same time, she points to the table where these snacks are. And there is deathly silence in the room for several minutes. Leaning against the door, Kana explains that it's a fluffy, fine-grained dough with just the right amount of sweetness that doesn't ruin the texture. And it's not fair at all to eat this royal dorayaki. a legend in the dorayaki world, without telling her. Then Yuma asks if she wants dorayaki, since he's already full, and if she wants it, then let her have it. The girl is delighted by this proposal and hugs the main character, which leaves him perplexed. And Kana says that in that case, she needs to make tea and asks if there will be tea for the others. She gets an affirmative answer to her question. The son and father are left alone, and Yuto tells the guy that he probably has a lot to catch up on. But the main character says that this is not true, because it is all because of his father. Some time later, the old man notices a huge beam in the ceiling and does not understand where it could have come from. Then he remembers Yuma. Because he hasn't cleaned for a long time, he gets furious at his carelessness. And he says that someday he will definitely get to the point where he will throw out Yuma, like that brave man, or rather his father. He then turns around and goes off to look for his grandson, not understanding what is happening to him. And a funnel forms in the pool, and a woman with cat ears appears from there, declaring that the transfer is complete. And then, taking out weapons in the form of sharp knives from her bosom, she says with a serious expression on her face that the heroes need to be killed. The girls are sitting at the table, but only Kana and Lavinia are drinking tea with the dorayaki, and the princess is simply watching them while the girls admire the treat. And then they begin to insist that Alphen also try this wonderful treat and not refuse. Then the demon mistress asks the guy if she can take his share. He answers in the affirmative and tells her to make herself at home. But suddenly a voice is heard in the distance calling Yuma. It is his old man. He loudly stomps his feet so that everyone can hear him and asks where the guy hid. Yuma remembers in fear that he washed the windows, but never finished. His father says with resentment in his voice that apparently the old man found them. Berta intervenes in their conversation and reminds Yuma that he still left a gift in the roof. The guy jumps up abruptly, saying that he will be back soon, as he understands that the old man will not leave it that easily. Then he stops because of some sound, and at the same second a girl dressed in a cloak and with cat ears falls from the ceiling, and also leaves a hole in the ceiling. She lands right on the table in front of the protagonist, thus blocking his entire view. Yuma sits in bewilderment, not knowing what to do, and asks, turning to the stranger, who she is. The girls didn't react to this at all, but just continued drinking tea with dorayaki. And the guy's father only asked if this was really a new character. But the stranger did not answer them, but only said that the hero had been found and must be killed. And then she took out her weapon, and she headed straight for the guy, who in turn froze in place out of fear and could no longer move. Her attack is stopped by the princess's maid, who asks the guy to run away with Alphen from this place as quickly as possible. He tries to object to her, but his father interrupts him, saying that Bertha turned out to be not so weak, but rather strong. But Yuma is horrified by her father's words and asks him to show her respect. Standing with Bertha, the stranger tells her that the maid is bothering her. Lavinia then calls out to the stranger, asking her to come to her, but she only replies that the demon lord is busy now and she does not want to distract her. Lavinia tells her that she still doesn't understand who she is hunting, because the guy standing in front of her is none other than the demon king. The stranger's face shows surprise. She doesn't understand how this is possible, and then says that Lavinia's words are not true, and she is sure that she can smell the hero. After all, her nose has never let her down. The main character does not understand what smell she is talking about, and begins to frantically sniff his entire body. Lavinia again tells the stranger that there is no need to doubt everything she is saying at the moment. And yet the girl with cat ears can't just take her word for it because he definitely smells like a hero. Then the princess jumps in, saying that they got her right. Yuma is not a demon king, but a real hero. She said all this with her head held high. Then Berta, turning to her highness, says that she was just about to take the princess out of her comfort zone, but she can't believe that she already has something to say. Then Lavinia goes to the stranger on one side and says that this guy is the demon king. Alphen also doesn't waste time and approaches her from the other side, claiming that the guy is a hero. The girls continue their argument, each insisting on her own, while the stranger stands there and doesn't know what to do or who to believe. Then Bertha intervenes in their argument again and tells her highness that now is not the right time for such conversations. The stranger, noticing that the maid was distracted, decided to take advantage of this moment and pushed her back, but Bertha did not expect this at all. Then the girl with cat ears walked towards the guy. Grabbing him, they headed outside the room, thereby breaking the window and flying outside. But the girls did not expect that something like this could happen, and the stranger, holding the guy by the collar and flying out of the window, headed in an unclear position. All three girls went out onto the balcony and couldn't understand where they were going together. But the stranger and Yuma were getting further and further away from them. Kana finally sounds the alarm and says that he has apparently been kidnapped. Alphen says that they urgently need to go after them. Only Lavinia is not particularly happy with this outcome of events, and meanwhile in the living room, where the maid and the protagonist's father are, Berta asks him for forgiveness, but he only says that there's nothing terrible in it, and he replays the events of today, saying that first the princess, then another girl from the demon tribe, and now a third. How can he not be happy about such a day? Then he slams his hands on the table and declares that he is sure that this guy will ruin everything. And getting up from the floor, he confidently declares that he is going to help his son, because his father will help him take care of his future. But before he could leave the room, someone hit him in the throat. It was none other than the old man. From such a blow, Yuto falls to the floor, and the old man asks where he was going. But the protagonist's father tries to justify himself. But the old man doesn't want to listen to him and says that he doesn't know anything, because Yuto will go with him anyway. And saying these words, he drags the man by the scruff of the neck. The protagonist's father still tries to stop the old man, saying that he has a new story. And he asks how long a good adult will last with his children. But there is no answer to this question. Sometime later, the three girls are walking around the neighborhood, and Kana notices that they are nowhere to be found. A girl in a school uniform, sitting on a bench eating ice cream, calls out to Kana and asks what happened. She turns around at the sound of her voice and calls the girl Riri. Then, they both greet each other, and Kana asks the girl if she has seen Yuma. She thought for a moment, and then said that she remembered something and said that it seemed like he was heading to Rakena. The princess doesn't understand what this means. Kana explains to her that there is a very large park nearby. Then, all three turn around and Kana thanks Riri for her help. She only tells him to call her again if anything happens. The girl looks after the ladies as they leave, and after eating an ice cream stick, the word bite is written on it. And then she says, as if into the void, that they should be careful. Meanwhile, in Rockham Park, a guy sits among the trees with his hands tied and asks a stranger what she is doing now. But she only tells him to be quiet, and the forces on him continue to sniff him, while saying that he really does smell like a hero. But Lady Lavinia was also right, and he also smells like the Demon King. The main character doesn't understand what she's talking about. The girl also doesn't fully understand whether he's a hero or a demon lord. But when she smelled his scent, she had an idea. She asks why they don't have a baby, and tells him that it would be a great idea. At the same time, the girl takes off all her clothes and sits naked in front of the guy, and he is completely shocked by what he sees. The girl reassures him that everything is fine because he is safe, and she is sure that he is old enough to know that there is nothing to worry about. And yet, she is a little nervous. Then all her attention switches to the object, or to be more precise, the arrow flying over their heads. She dodges in time and asks who it could be. Then someone apologizes to Yuma. It was Alphen. She shielded the guy with her body, saying that she won't get away with this anymore. The stranger merely assumed a combat-ready pose, warning her that anyone who interfered with the creation of a child should not complain about being killed. Kana runs up to the main character, unties his hands, and asks if everything is okay with him. And did this stranger do anything to him? But the guy only admits that if he had just a little more, he would have let off steam. Kana doesn't understand what they are talking about. Then both girls start fighting with each other. Yuma asks them to stop, and stop it. But Berta explains to him that if the princess is serious about fighting, it will be quite difficult to stop them. The guy says that the maid's words do not match her actions, because she herself holds the video ball and records everything. But Yuma doesn't give up so easily and approaches Lavinia, saying that she is her friend, and then asks her to stop her. The demon lord put her hands behind her head and said that it is a little difficult to see the true nature of the beast. And yet, Lavinia wonders why the girl ended up in beast mode, and maybe she was in heat. Yuma says he doesn't know what he needs to do, but Kana tries to stop him and says he shouldn't risk himself. Lavinia looks at the main character, then at the stranger, and a brilliant idea comes to his mind. She calls out the guy's name, and she assures him that she knows how to stop them, and there is only one thing that can do it. but she will need the help of the main character for this. The guy was inspired by what he heard and, coming closer to her, he asks what he needs to do for this. Lavinia tells him to say to himself that he is the Demon King. Yuma said that he understood everything. The Demon Lord continues and says that now she needs him to combine his Demon King magic with hers. The protagonist does not understand how to combine them. The girl explains to him that if she goes into estrus mode, the last thing she needs to do is satisfy her. Or she can use a lot of Demon King magic to rid her of these feelings. But the boy still doesn't understand how to do it. The Demon Lord reassures him, saying that everything is fine and all they need to do is show her the power of love between him and her. Yuma says he doesn't care how to do it if she says so. The Demon Lord asks for his forgiveness, then tells him to just be patient for a minute. But she doesn't understand whether he is uncomfortable doing this to her or just ashamed. But she reminds him that he is doing this to save both of them. After such speeches, the guy confidently declares, turning to Kana, that they must help them. The girl is shocked by these words, and the main character says that it's time for them to start, and while both girls are fighting, Yuma grabbed Lavinia's neck and asked her for forgiveness, but she tells him that he cannot transmit magic in this way alone. The guy asks her for forgiveness and does not know why nothing works for him. Lavinia takes his hand, saying that she will help him, and exposing her cleavage, she pushes his hands straight there. The protagonist begins to squeeze them tighter, but Kana doesn't understand what's happening between them. The guy explains to her that he's just trying to help them both, so he tells the girl not to worry about it. But Kana doesn't understand if Yuma will go crazy if he doesn't take care of them, but she gets nothing in return because the guy is too busy. And Lavinia keeps saying that it's amazing and she wants more, asking Yuma for it. And she lowers one of his hands, just below his waist. And Kana, watching all this, burns with shame and says that Yuma is already becoming such a grown man. Lavinia tells him to continue and do it again. The guy does so, which gives the girl even more satisfaction. Meanwhile, the girls continue their battle, not paying any attention to them. Alphen only thinks to herself that she did not expect this stranger to be as strong as Lavinia, and he is already preparing to dodge her blows again, when suddenly the main character shouts, asking Alphen to step aside. The girl doesn't understand what's going on, and Yuma just says that it's finally going, and it's the power of the Demon King's love, emanating from these two. Directed at the warring girls. A huge heart flies at a stranger and knocks her off her feet, but she in turn cannot believe this nonsense, and as she was knocked down by magic with such a funny name. Kana and Alphen watch what is happening with their mouths open, because it shocked them. Sometime later, it was already dark outside, and Yuma's father continued to hammer nails into the roof, thereby repairing it, and at the same time asking why this is happening to him. But the old man only urges him on, telling him to hurry up and finish this as soon as possible, because it's already getting dark. Meanwhile, everyone is in the living room. A stranger is lying at the protagonist's feet, and Alphen says that she is completely confused about everything. The girl with cat ears explains to her that she cannot do her job because she is useless and has nowhere to go but back, and from now on she will live on Yuma's lap. But the princess declares that she cannot say that, because Lavinia can say exactly the same thing. But turning around, he realizes that the girl is not there, and Berta explains to her that Miss Lavinia went to visit Kana, since the girl prepared a delicious dinner. The mistress of the demons could not refuse, and yet the princess tells the stranger not to interfere. But she does not listen to her, because she has long ago decided that she will spend the night here. Alphen pierces her with his gaze and grabs her by the scruff of the neck, telling her to get out of here. Berta, watching this, only says that the princess is too petty, and the stranger declares that she and Yuma are inseparable. Only the guy sits in shock. The main character is sleeping soundly in his bed. Most likely, he is having a good dream, as he is drooling. He expects absolutely nothing, but suddenly the door to his room opens and a princess sits on her knees, greeting Yuma. But this didn't wake the guy up at all, and he continued to sleep just as soundly, but as soon as Alphen looked at his sleeping face, she decided not to wake him up and give him the opportunity to sleep longer. Then she notices something strange, or rather, some kind of lump under the blanket, and the girl cannot believe herself. After removing the blanket, this stranger appears underneath him, and she lies close to the main character, hugging him. The princess cannot believe it, and, unable to restrain herself, begins to scream loudly. The maid asks Her Highness to stop. Alphen asks Kokone what she is doing here and whether she has mixed something up. Having woken up from her scream, the stranger only asks her to stop these strange accusations against her. After all, she had already told her more than once that this was Kokone's house. Alphen tries to pull the girl away from the guy, but she clung to him very tightly. The princess does not understand what kind of accusations these are, and Kokone only asks not to disturb the main character while he sleeps, hugging him along the way. Waking up because of this noise, the guy asks what these two are doing here. As soon as he woke up, the princess immediately left the stranger, sat down further away and said that nothing happened. And then, with a smile on her face, she wishes him good morning. Kokone is watching all this and asks the guy not to let himself be deceived by her sweet words. Yuma just laughs lightly and asks what the girl with cat ears is saying. Some time later, after everyone has woken up, they are all in the living room, each busy with their own business. Yuma then asks everyone how long they plan to stay at his house, which takes the princess by surprise, and she asks if they were too intrusive for the protagonist. The guy tries to justify himself by saying that this is not true at all. He was just wondering if it was normal for a princess to stay in such a place and live in such conditions. Alphen confidently states that he has nothing to worry about because she has sisters she can rely on. After all this, the guy declares that he does not plan to go with them to another world. This stuns the princess. She cannot believe what she heard. She tries to wake him up, but the maid immediately stops her, saying that it will be very bad if she continues to ask him to come so persistently. Although this upsets her, a thought comes to her mind, and she says that she finally understands. After all, besides Yuma, she has another very important mission that she must complete, and that is the return of the sacred sword. The guy is surprised and then asks what this sacred sword is and if it can be the hero's sword. Alphen says that he understood everything correctly, and in fact, this sword should belong to the main character. Yuma says that he will then ask his father about it, and just then Yuto appears from behind the door, and he says that now he understands what the guys were talking about, but he rushes to upset everyone and says that he lost that very sacred sword. Yuma and the princess cannot believe it, because such a thing is simply impossible. But the boy's father isn't finished and says that he's also lost the demon sword. Lavinia just sighs, trying to pretend that she cares and continues to do her own thing without being distracted from reading the book. The main character becomes furious and, coming closer to his father, tells him that he can believe that his father is capable of losing such a precious thing. And in the end, he adds that he is too reckless. Yuto asks his son to calm down and listen to him first. And, first of all, when he and his mother returned to this place, they were broke. Some time ago, holding tightly to her husband, they leave this world and go back to their home. But in the end, they teleport over a pool in which healthy men with almost no clothes are stuck in the bath. Yuto is happy that they are back, and then he notices that he and his wife are standing there completely naked, and all the men's eyes are focused on her. The girl is happy that they did it, and their successful transfer, and Yuto just tells all the men present at that moment not to look at his wife. Present day. The protagonist's father says he is surprised that they all managed to move to this world with their clothes. The maid explains to him that teleportation magic has improved greatly since then. Still, Alphen wonders where the sacred sword is in the end. Berta says she is sure that the sword is not in a parallel world. Then Lavinia asks if that means the sword is somewhere in this world. The princess wonders why she speaks about this, as if it does not concern her at all. Lying on the floor, leaning on her elbow and leafing through a magazine, the demon lord says that everything is simple, because the demon sword should fly to the demon king as soon as he calls for it. Then the princess says that if this is so, then this means that the sacred sword must also be here if the hero calls upon it. But the boy's father intervenes in their conversation, saying that they've already tried to do this, but all their attempts were in vain, and even when he and his wife tried to call him, nothing worked either. And then a brilliant idea comes to all three of them, and everyone immediately looks at the main character, and he, in turn, does not understand what is happening to them and what they want from him. Sometime later, everyone went to the backyard and watched Yuma expectantly. He says he will start with the demon sword. Lavinia only tells him to try hard. The princess, sighing heavily, says that there is nothing to be done, since they decided it by lot. The guy takes action. Sticking his hand forward, he summons the demonic sword Lavidor, and then says that as the Lord of Darkness, he orders him to come into his hands and obey him. But absolutely nothing happens. The current demon lord starts laughing loudly, saying that this is such a shame. And the princess is just perplexed by what is happening. The main character says that it is quite difficult, and he thinks whether he should try to summon the sacred sword. Alphen immediately perks up and says that this is exactly what he should do. The boy knows this and then holds out his hand again, calling upon the sacred sword of Faria, saying that, as the Lord of Light, he commands it to come into his hands and obey him. And again silence. Absolutely nothing happened. Lavinia becomes even funnier from what is happening. Meanwhile, Kana came to Yumu's house and actively searched for him in the living room, but did not notice anyone there. She doesn't understand where everyone is because she spent so long preparing the dishes she brought with her, and then she notices something in front of her, and it shocks her. Coco notices something strange near the door. Lavinia notices that the girl is acting strange, and asks what happened. But Kokoni doesn't listen to her at all. She goes to the door and opens it, causing Kana and the food containers to fall forward. Yuma sees the girl fall, but does not have time to take any action and remains simply standing. Berta and Alphen are also looking at what is happening with surprise, but only Lavinia is calm, like a boa constrictor in this situation. With her tentacles, she will save Kana from falling. The girl did not expect to be caught, and the demon lord tells her that she is very frivolous, and then asks if she is hurt. But in response to this, the girl only thanks her. And Kokone picked up the fruit containers and had already managed to open them and sniff them, realizing how delicious they smell. Hanging upside down, Kana asks what they are all doing here. Are they really going to make something delicious again without her? The protagonist only asks her to go down, and only Berta clarifies that, as she thought, Yuma was unable to summon the sacred sword. The princess approaches the demon lord, asking her to get dressed, because she is embarrassing the guy with her appearance. And noticing that Tavinia is not looking at her, he asks if she is listening to her. But she is only watching the dialogue between Kana and Yuma, where a girl asks a guy to turn away because he's acting weird. Yuma tries to convince her otherwise. Meanwhile, the children leave the Abacus Club. Usagi says goodbye to the teacher and then goes home with her friends. But their paths diverge. So she goes on alone and passes through a busy street where there are a lot of people, but a second later, they all disappeared. The girl is nervous about this, because this is the boundary of the highest demon and she can't do anything about it. Looking up, she sees a girl with a braid standing on the roof of the building greeting Aina, who is standing on the ground. The little girl guessed that it was Ruri's doing. And then she asks what the girl will do if she finds out. Ruri says that it will be interesting and fun. To be more precise, she means that the atmosphere becomes more lively around Yuma. She turned her back on the little girl and asked if that shouldn't mean it was time for her to take action. The girl became very gloomy after the question was asked and, without raising her head, asked why she was bothering her even with this question. But Ruri is not at all bothered by this, because she is having fun with what is happening and asks if she is not given the opportunity to be loyal after all. After all, in their past life, they took an oath of allegiance. She calls the girl Maui and asks if she is saying everything correctly, but the girl is not at all happy about it. Meanwhile, in the kingdom of Nirvana, the girl is in a great hurry with her maid. Her face is very gloomy and not happy. One of the servants decides to stop her, calling the girl Rilfi and asking her to stop for at least a minute. But only her maid turns around. The man comes closer to her and says that the situation with Alphen, as usual, was reported by Berta, and she doesn't have to go there. These words make Rilfi very angry, and she says that she was against the idea of sending her older sister there from the very beginning, and this is the duty of the princess of her country for all time. The man does not stop and continues, saying that this is a great reason for her to act like a princess, but she shouldn't go there, because his little sister will be more than enough to deal with the demon. The maid Rilfi asks Alphen to tolerate the hero's behavior for a little while, until she gets there. The girl and her maid have already approached the huge doors, and she says that she does not want to believe the hero from another world, because she was against all of this from the very beginning, and she is determined not to let the hero take her sister. This scares the man and makes him put a smile on the maid's face, touching the door handle and opening it wide. Rilfi says that's why she will personally go there to bring her sister home safe and sound. Standing on the floor in the bathroom with a yellow-green brush in his hands, the main character cleans everything inside until it shines. And then he looks outside and has a wonderful view of the mountain, where everything is covered in snow. Continuing to clean, the guy says that when the bathroom is clean, his mood improves, because a clean bathroom means a clean shower. He has a bandage on his head, and his pants rolled up to keep them from getting wet in the water as he continues to scrub the tiles in the bathroom, saying that so much has happened lately, that he didn't have even a little time to clean up, because he was always busy. Suddenly, a magic circle appeared above his head again. He notices it and it stuns him. He stops and doesn't move for a couple of seconds because he can't believe it's happening again. And there stands Rilfi with her maid. She tells her mistress that they are there and jumps into the empty pool, landing cleanly on the ground. It seemed that the girl did not notice Yuma, who was next to her, and Rilfi only looked around and asked if her sister was really in this place. The magic circle she was standing on begins to disappear. The maid sees that her masters are beginning to fall, but she does not have time to do anything, and is only surprised that she has not yet descended. Rilfi was already falling from a great height at this time, intending to hit the stone tiles in the pool, since it was not filled with water. But the main character noticed this, and in order to avoid the girl getting hurt, he threw away his brush and, making a huge jump, caught Rilfi, telling her to be careful. The maid immediately runs up to them to see if everything is okay with her mistress, and if she is hurt. Holding the girl in his arms, Yuma asks if she is hurt and if everything is okay. Rilfi looks the guy over from head to toe, silently for a while, but instead of answering the question, she asks if this guy is really an ordinary servant. It's not that the main character is delighted after hearing this, but he understands perfectly well why she thought so. It's all because of his appearance. After being silent for a while, the guy says that his name is Tsugari Yuma. The girl and the maid are shocked after they hear that he is Tsugari. Then the girl, still in the protagonist's arms, asks incredulously if this means he is a hero. The guy says that according to Alphen, everything is so. But as soon as Rilfi heard her sister's name, she did not let him finish the sentence, and immediately asked where her sister was and what had happened to her, and then asked to be taken to her right now. Having gotten to know the girl a little better, he asked if she really was the princess's younger sister. Rilfi says that he understood everything correctly, and tells him his name, and the maid, following them, only admires the fact that she sees a real hero in front of her. Still in the protagonist's arms, Rilfi says that he needs to talk less and do more, so he needs to take her to his sister. The guy just thinks to himself that she is not going to get off and continues to carry her further. Meanwhile, everyone is in the living room. The maid and the princess are sitting at the table, drinking tea and actively talking about something. Kokon and Lavinia are lying on the floor, leafing through a book, and a female voice can be heard from the hallway, indignantly asking how much longer they have to go and where her sister is. Alphen doesn't understand what's going on there, and then Yuma enters the room with Rilfi in her arms. She greets her sister, and the guy looks very tired, and several streams of sweat are running down his body. They are surprised by the arrival of their sister, and Rilfi asks the protagonist to finally let her go. Yuma is very happy about this, so he gladly lowers her to the ground. Rilfi explains to her that she came for her sister, but Alphen doesn't look happy. She asks what her little sister is doing. She looks very angry, and her sister's arrival did not make her happy at all. Rilfi cannot understand what is going on and what is happening to her sister. Alphen stands with tears in his eyes and asks why Yuma is holding her in his arms. Because it is so unfair, and when the younger sister gets ahead of the older one, it's the same betrayal as if she secretly slipped her a hated side dish consisting of meat and carrots for lunch. But Rilfi, with a serious expression on his face, explains to her that she is a princess, and princesses can be carried in one's arms as much as one wants, and she does not understand the reason for her hysteria. Alphen's face immediately changes, and she starts to glow with happiness, because she forgot about it for a second. Then the younger sister tells her to say goodbye to the hero, but the princess doesn't understand what she's getting at. Rilfi explains to her that she came here for a reason. Alphen still doesn't understand what her sister means. She tells her that her older sister will go with her to the kingdom. Tears began to appear in the princess's eyes. She does not believe what she heard, and then asks what they should do with the hero. The younger sister explains to her that they don't need to take the hero with them, because the three of them can handle the demons. But before she could say this, she noticed that there were not only them in the living room, but also demons. When Rilfi notices them, she is horrified because she cannot believe what she sees with her own eyes. The girl doesn't understand what they are doing here. And Lavinia, lying on the floor, asks with a grin if she really just saw them. Hugging the protagonist's leg, Kokoni says that she can ignore it altogether, but Yuma asks the girl to let go of his leg since they are now having an important conversation. Alphen realizes the situation she is in, so he turns away trying to hide from his sister. But she quickly notices her and stops her with her scream, and then angrily asks what all this could mean, and maybe she has already managed to make friends with the demons during this time. The princess explains to her that in order to explain this entire complicated situation to her, she will need at least a week, so she asks her sister to calm down. But this only makes Rilfi even more horrified, and she, grabbing her sister's hand, asks why it should take longer than she has been here. And she says that she has had enough, and Alphen is coming home with her right now. The older sister freezes in horror, because this is not at all what she wanted. And the demon lord, without taking her eyes off the book, wished the princess a good journey and said goodbye to her. Kokoni, left hanging on Yuma's leg, only said that she hoped that she would never see her again. Alphen just says that they are just heartless. Not a second of honey. Rilfi grabbed her older sister by the hand and said that they are heading home. The princess asks her to stop for a while. The maids of both girls follow them, and here Bertha says that Rilfi is as always too jealous of her sister and that she loves her sister so much. Rilfi's maid says that she is not betraying herself. But then the protagonist intervenes, saying that it is not very good to force Alphen to go against her will, and he suggests that they discuss everything first, which makes the princess incredibly happy. But Rilfi only sternly answers him that no. After all, this is only their business with their sister, or to be more precise, it is a matter of national importance. And he also says that the heroes shouldn't stick their noses where they're not wanted. And then Lavinia joins the conversation saying that this really isn't Yuma's business. After all, he is the Demon King, and in the meantime he hugs the guy from behind, showing the truth of his words. This surprises Rilfi, and Berta and the princess are horrified that the girl found out about this before they had time to leave this place. After thinking for a while, Rilfi asks if this means that this Demon King who pretended to be a hero, he did all sorts of debauchery to her older sister against her will, and Rilfi already had this picture in her head. Alphen can't believe that her sister thinks so. Yuma doesn't understand why the girl could think such a thing, because he didn't even give her a reason. But Rilfi's anger does not subside, and she continues, saying that she will take revenge for all the suffering he caused her sister. This does not please the protagonist, and he asks the princess to explain to her sister that this is just a misunderstanding and that she is deeply mistaken in her judgments. But Alphen asks Yuma to stop, reminding him that he had previously studied every curve of her body in detail, and she could not call this a misunderstanding. The guy screams, saying that this is exactly the complete misunderstanding that he would like to forget. Boiling with anger, and after all she has heard, Rilfi asks her older sister for permission to allow her to avenge her. But Yuma asks what kind of revenge, since her sister is standing next to her alive and well. And then Alphen takes action, separating the protagonist from his sister, explaining that she misunderstood everything, and telling her that there is no need to fight because of her. Rilfi sighs heavily, and says that apparently everyone in this room has brainwashed her with their speeches. The protagonist does not know what to do, because Rilfi does not listen to them at all, letting everything go in one ear and out the other. Bertha turns to the maid Rilfi, calling her sister Platz, and asks if she has any ideas on the matter. After thinking for a while, the girl says that if Rilfi is already so stubborn, then she won't listen to her either, so it's useless. Yuma asks Berta if she is really her older sister, but Platz herself answers, saying that she is, and that she is constantly looking after her little sister. Here, Rilfi calls Platz, asking to give her her weapon. The maid unquestioningly fulfills her request, and now the youngest skate is already standing armed with a spear, pointing it at the guy. And then she tells the Demon King to prepare for death and starts attacking him. Everyone present tries to stop her, but she doesn't plan to do it. And Yuma's father watches what is happening from behind a crack in a door, while making notes in a notebook for his future story. But then he notices a lizard with a third eye on the ceiling, and this leaves him in great shock. While outside, Rilfi tells the protagonist that it is inconvenient to fight indoors, so she goes outside just as he asked. And then she asks him to take out his weapon, while confidently holding the spear in her hands, showing that she is armed. But Yuma doesn't fully understand where he needs to get a weapon, and then Lavinia intervenes, while simultaneously eating sweets, and says what to do with him. A smirk appears on her face, and a piece of her clothing is sent in a direction unknown to all of them, and then a second later, she holds a sword in front of her. And he hands it to the guy, telling him to use it in good health. Yuma catches the sword and doesn't know what to do with it. And yet, he doesn't like this whole situation. And he thinks that it shouldn't be like this. And besides, swinging a sword is very dangerous. You can never predict what might happen. But those present are not bothered or worried at all. They try to explain to the guy that everything will be fine. And Lavinia explains to him that the sword he holds in his hands will only cut what he wants himself. But these words do not calm the guy down much, and the excitement does not go away, but Rilfi does not care at all, and she asks if he is ready for their battle. The protagonist can't believe they're really going to have to fight, because he'd like to avoid it. The princess tries to cheer him up by telling him to be careful, then tells the guy that if she's just strong, that her younger sister's insanely strong and she can swat him like a fly, so that there might not be a single living place left of him. These words do not make Yuma very happy, although he did not fully understand the meaning of her words. But he will try to do everything possible. Armed with magic circles, Rilfi says that now is the time for the real battle, and then she immediately rushed to attack the main character, not giving him a second to think. The guy certainly didn't expect this. He froze in a daze for a couple of seconds. He was brought back to his senses by the princess's voice shouting his name, and at the last moment he managed to dodge all of Rilfi's prepared attacks. Yuma is delighted with the sword, saying that it is simply amazing and that his body moved on its own because of it. A happy Lavinia proudly says that this is what she told him earlier. Rilfi, in turn, says that this was to be expected from the Demon King. However, all the most interesting things will start right now, and at that very second, using her staff, she summons a bunch of magic circles that fill the sky. It looks very powerful, but it also makes the protagonist want to hide and run away from this place. She directs all of her magic circles straight towards Yuma while telling them to move forward. The guy manages to fight them off, or to be more precise, the sword. But still, due to such a large number, he cannot reflect them all, as he thought earlier. While eating delicious sweets, Lavinia gives him a hint and tells him that if he doesn't go on the attack, Rilfi will slap him with her ult. The guy stands in complete shock and does not understand what she is talking about and what she is getting at. And meanwhile, the youngest of the sisters is ready to wipe the main character off the face of the earth. And Lavinia begins to explain to him, as if acting as a teacher, that the ult accumulates after a certain number of hits. So if she is not dealt with quickly, then Yuma will be finished. In the end, she adds the same thing will happen on the exam. Kokono confirms her words, saying that there will be a percent. The guy says that let the demon lord say so. But what should he do with Rilfi at the moment? After examining her more closely, an idea comes to his mind, and he says that he understands, and if he breaks her staff, she will not be able to cast magic. Putting a spoonful of sweets into her mouth, Lavinia smiles proudly, praising the guy and saying that he is a great guy, since he figured it all out himself. Turning back, the demon lord notices the boy's father and tells him to stop looking. Yuto ignores her words, not paying attention and continuing to watch what is happening. But Lavinia's words were not addressed to the protagonist's father, but to the lizard with a third eye located on the ceiling. With a snap of 2 fingers, the lizard's third eye was destroyed by the demon lord's magic, which drove a nail into it. Meanwhile, Yuma runs as fast as he can to stab the princess's little sister and says he will stop her. Now he is already approaching her close and is ready to strike her, and she says that although he has figured out how to defeat her, it is already too late. This does not stop the protagonist for a second, and he continues his attack, and on one of his hands appears a symbol indicating that he is the Demon King. Rilfi notices this and asks him what kind of coat of arms has appeared on his hand, since he didn't have one before. But Yuma doesn't pay attention to these words either, and only gives instructions for the sword to cut only the staff. And now he has already struck her, and is already behind her, and everyone present cannot believe their eyes, because the guy had so much determination. But this didn't bother Rilfi one bit. She just grinned contentedly after what happened, and spun her staff around its axis. And then, putting him on the ground, safe and sound, without a single scratch, she asked the guy what just happened. This takes Yuma by surprise. Because he tried so hard, it also makes him feel sad. He doesn't understand how he could not break down. And again, standing in a combat-ready pose, he simply began to wait, and his father, watching everything through the window, said that his son did everything right and that he himself understood this perfectly well. Unable to bear it any longer, the protagonist decides to ask Lavinia what just happened and why the staff remained unharmed. The demon lord doesn't fully understand his question and says that nothing special happened, and reminds him that this sword only cuts what it wants to, which means that he wanted to cut something else more than the staff. And at that moment, the smirk disappears from Rilfi's face after her clothes begin to tear before her eyes. And literally a second later, all her clothes are torn and she stands completely naked and does not understand what just happened to her. The main character also cannot believe what is happening and how this could have happened at all, because he did not want this, and Lavinia only giggles on the sidelines and says that she told him about it. Yuma immediately tries to justify himself to the girl, saying that she misunderstood everything because he was simply trying to break the staff. Lavinia says that they already know everything, so the guy doesn't have to be shy. But he just asks not to interpret his words in their own way. And Rilfi doesn't listen to them at all, but with each passing second she becomes more and more angry and furious. After a long silence, she says that this is it, just like they all tried to leave her like this. A second later, she calls Platz to take action. The maid understands what she is getting at, and at the same second sends 3 pieces of paper to her mistress. And all 3 of these leaves cover the most important parts of Rilfi's body. And the girl only tells the guy that he really is great with a sword. However, their battle is not over yet. But the guy tries to explain to her that in this form, she is out of the game. Here the girl is suddenly distracted by someone, angry by name, because of which she turns around. And at the same second a towel is thrown on her. It was the older sister, who is trying to take care of the younger one, and then tells her to stop, because she shouldn't continue to make herself look so horrible. But to this, Rilfi tells her that she is of course grateful that her sister cares about her, but that won't stop the girl. After all, her body is worthy of respect, and then asks if even one corner of her body can be called ugly. Alphen tries to explain to her that this is not the case, and it does not make much difference, so he asks her to get dressed. Rilfi finally says that maybe she really is ashamed that the Demon King is looking at her in such an indecent manner. The princess says that everything is not like that at all, and begins to explain to her that Yuma is half Demon King and half hero. This takes the younger sister by surprise, and she doesn't understand what kind of nonsense her sister is talking about, because this can't be true. And then Berta takes matters into her own hands and begins to explain to the girl that the main character was born from the love of a former hero and a former demon queen, and he has the characteristics of both his parents. That is, the Demon King and the hero. So Alphen told her everything correctly. Rilfi can't believe it and stands there in disbelief for a few seconds until leaves start falling from her body, covering everything that needs to be covered. Then she asks them again. After all, he still can't believe it. And now, sometime later, everyone is sitting in the living room again, and after Rilfi tells him about the whole situation in more detail, the younger sister asks why the older sister didn't tell her about this before, since it's such an important thing. The guy interrupts their conversation, asking if it wasn't Rilfi herself who didn't want to listen to anyone from the very beginning. Alphen only turns away out of shame and asks his sister for forgiveness. And then Rilfi begins to think that if he only has half the power of a hero, shouldn't this mean that he has never met the royal family? Her maid asks if the girl is too rash in her judgments. After all, it could be that he turns out to be not half a hero, but a whole one. Rilfi analyzed everything that was said to her, and then she said that everything was clear here, and they would not be able to avoid problems if the guy fell into the hands of demons. And then she suddenly stands up, saying that so be it, she will take Yuma under her strict leadership. And in the meantime, she begins to hug the guy, pressing him to herself. Alphen is not happy about this and says that she will not let her sister take the main character away from her, just like that. Rilfi did not expect her sister to become so serious. The demons in the back are having fun, making even more noise and encouraging the girls with their screams. After some brainstorming, Rilfi comes to the conclusion that her sister really wants to mate with Yuma herself. This makes Alphen blush. She didn't expect her sister to say something like that. Only Yuma doesn't understand what they're talking about and what the word mate means at all. His father sits down next to him and whispers in his ear that this word means having children. This leaves the guy in shock, and he sits there without moving for some time. And Rilfi continues and says that this will not happen. After all, her sister is the crown princess, and that is why she must dedicate her body entirely to the kingdom. And then he says that since it is so important for Alphen to mate with Yuma, it is better to leave it to her, the second princess. These words shock the girl, and she cannot believe what was said earlier. And unable to withstand such pressure any longer, she runs away from there and at the same time says that her sister is a thief. Rilfi sighs tiredly and says that if everything were as she wanted, then they could live in peace and quiet, and does not understand that her older sister might not like it. And then she says that her sister is so problematic, to which the main character only tells her that Rilfi has rather specific logic. But she does not listen to him and says that maybe he will be dissatisfied with her. But she will try not to disgrace her honor in front of him, and now she will count on him. Saying these words, she bows low to the guy, and he, in turn, does not understand what she is counting on from him. Lavinia interrupts their conversation and says that they won't allow Yuma to be taken by themselves. Kokonan also joins the conversation and says that she will stay with the protagonist forever, no matter what. And then Rilfi realizes that until recently this was only his and his sister's business. But now, everything has changed. And she sees no point in arguing with demons over nothing. Yuma sits in shock, because she decides his fate for him. Shaking hands, the second princess says that now the main character will be under their control and under the control of the demons. These conditions suit Lavinia, so she simply agrees with her. And the boy's father only praises the second princess, saying that by making an agreement with the demons, it is possible to maintain the balance of power, and that this is very clever. But Platz explains to him that all this is boring only to limit the hero, and also to control Alfin's behavior, and this is something his father did not expect to hear. And so the three girls stand nearby and decide what day they will come and spend it with Yuma. Meanwhile, in the Demon King's castle, several important figures are gathered around a large table, watching the ball that shows Rilfi and Yuma's fight. One of them says that apparently Kokone did not cope with her task, and the second one also joins the conversation. And she says that no matter how you look at it, chimeras like her will never be able to compare with them, the 6 great generals. And so the demon in glasses says that, in addition to everything else, Lavinia needs to sort this matter out, continuing to take a wait-and-see attitude. Looking at the door, the demoness with horns says that, in all likelihood, one of them will still have to go there personally. And if only the best general Rurigoddess had been with him at such a time, things would have been much better. They slammed the table and decided that in this case it would be best for them to entrust this matter to the Diamond General Gradolio. Meanwhile, Alfin, sitting on the roof of the main character's house, sits and cries. Thinking about how bad and heartless her sister is, Alfin asks Yuma not to abandon her, and then asks if he really doesn't need her anymore, as the others watch in silence. The guy calms her down, saying that he's just going to school, but the girl does not believe him. Rilfi asks not to pay attention to her sister. The boy apologizes to the princess again and explains that he cannot take her to school with him. Yuma's father reasons that the translation process is quite difficult, and even with his connections it will not be easy to do. Then he turns to Kokona, who is hanging on his leg, and asks her to let go. But she explains to him that where he goes, she goes too. Then Kana enters the room, asking if Yuma is ready. He explains to her that he was already getting ready to leave. As soon as the girl entered, she immediately saw that 2 girls were hanging on him and not letting him move. Alfin can't understand why she's so lucky, and she leaves with the guy. Kana doesn't know what to answer to that. Rilfi asks her sister to calm down, otherwise she will send her back. The girl immediately begins to ask her younger sister for leniency. Then Kana is surprised, because she didn't think that they were sisters. Then Rilfi asks her not to be shy about complaining about her sister at any time. And then suddenly, Lavinia comes up to Kanea from behind and hugs her, saying that she was in such a hurry to see her, and starts playing with her. Kana asks her to stop, but then Yuma interrupts them, saying that it's time for them to stop this fun, because it's time for them to go to school. The girl doesn't understand where he saw entertainment here. Sometime later, out of breath, they enter the classroom and are glad that they made it on time. Then someone calls them by name. It was Rika and Ruri. They greet each other. Ruri asks the guy to call her more informally too, but he can't afford to do so. The girl reasons that they can also be friends, since they communicate at school, but Kana explains to her that this is different from childhood friendship. And then Ruri starts making fun of Zena, which causes her to react violently and make her classmate laugh. The guy notices that they are very cheerful since the morning, and suddenly someone asks if the guy's his. He doesn't understand who's talking to him because the girls are not talking to him. Then the voice asks again if the hero can hear him. And then it dawns on him that it's a voice in his head, telling him to go up to the roof. Otherwise, everyone else might get hurt. Without thinking twice, he immediately gets up from his seat and goes to the roof. Rika asks if Kana is not on daily duty today. She completely forgot about him, so she runs to the teacher's room, and Ruri goes to the restroom and asks if Rika will go with her, but she refuses. Then, she leaves her alone. Meanwhile, at Yuma's house, both Horn Severus are cleaning the pool, lifting their dresses so as not to get dirty. The old man thanks them for their help, but they are only happy about it, because he took such good care of them and gave them a place to spend the night. But the old man refuses their gratitude, so the girls say that they will rub his back to show their gratitude. He doesn't understand how they can mock an elderly man like that, and Yuto can spy on them, simultaneously writing it down in his notebook, and can't believe what's happening. Having climbed onto the roof, the guy notices a huge robot who says that he was waiting for him. He is one of the 6 great demonic generals and is going to destroy him. This does not please the guy, and he falls down in fright and then asks if he is Lavinia's subordinate. He says that everything is exactly like that, but they have nothing more to talk about, and a second later, he thrusts his sword into the floor of the building and people disappear from the entire school. The guy is surprised by this, and the general explains to him that Barter created an empty world, a complete reflection of that. Yuma wants to leave there because his lessons will start soon, but the general tells him not to worry about it because he will not return to this world again. The guy doesn't understand what he's talking about, but the general calms him down and says that he won't suffer because he'll finish him off with one blow, and he swings his sword sharply. But then someone distracts him. It was Ruri. She fenced the guy off with her body, saying that she is the only girl warrior. The girl says that she will help Yuma, so he should call her informally. The general is surprised to see Ruri's weapon and skill, and then he asks if she is really the moon demon general Ruer goddess. The girl is surprised that she was exposed so quickly, but they are surprised that she was reborn as a human, because in the past she was killed by a former hero, but from that appearance, only her hair remained. She asks him to keep quiet and not talk about it, but the general does not understand why she is on the hero's side. Ruri explains to him that she is not on anyone's side. She just loves to fight, and now she is running to strike him. And then she says that she will also test his skills. The general notes that the reincarnation has not changed her. And then the girl starts teasing him, and the general only says that she really did have the best skills among them. But the jokes ended there, because he suddenly attacks her, causing the girl to fly to the side and almost fall, but manages to catch her balance in time and finds herself on her feet. Ruri praises the boy for listening to her, but asks if he needs to help her by summoning his sword. Yuma explains to her that he already tried, but nothing worked, and she explains to him that the sword is always with him. And then the guy gains confidence, and he calls upon the sword again, and the girl continues and goes on to fight. Meanwhile, Kana is walking and feeling sad because she can't understand where everyone went, and she realizes that something strange is happening, then stops near the window and says that Yuma is calling her. Meanwhile, Rika sits alone in the classroom and notices that time has stopped and wonders if the preparations are complete. Platz stood with a broom and smiled. She hummed something and greeted the hero, because he finally returned. Meanwhile, Ryuri was fighting one of the great demonic generals. The girl fought with special enthusiasm, and in her hands was a double-sided weapon. Yuma suddenly raised his hand and shouted, trying to summon the holy sword. He really hoped that it would come. The boy had already started asking for that sword to appear. He tried to figure out what to do now, because if he didn't summon a sacred sword quickly, Kanami might be left alone. Suddenly, the door behind him started to open, which made Yuma turn around. Kanami was standing behind the door. She looked at him in surprise, because she didn't expect to see him there. She also noticed Ruri, who was also in that room, and then her gaze fell on the huge giant. She did not understand why they were here and why they were fighting. Yuma turned to face the girl and did not understand what she was doing there. The girl asked again in fear and looked at him awkwardly. Kanami turned to him and said that she thought Yuma had called her. He said in surprise that it couldn't be. Ruri turned around and said that it was possible, also adding that he should quickly pull the holy sword out of Kana, which surprised both Yuma and Kana herself. The demonic general heard the words about the holy sword and was not going to allow it. That was why he was already reaching out to the boy and girl to stop them from doing what they were going to do. Suddenly, Ruri entered into a fight with the demonic general, and Yuma hugged Kanami to protect her from the advancing warrior. He choked and said that this would not do. Ruri wanted to know where he was looking with a wide smile and thought that it was a pleasant feeling and wanted to confirm this with the demonic general. Here, the warrior asked not to involve him in such an incomprehensible hobby, and the girl asked him not to be so cold towards her. This made Yuma and Konami turn around in shock. The girl didn't understand what kind of holy sword it was, because she didn't have anything like that. And this was Toro's sword, Kusarigama Raita Meguro. Ruri thought that she hadn't figured it out yet. She wanted to know what she thought. Why then were such uselessly large forms needed on their plump Konochka? The girl in response screamed that she was not plump, and even more so they were not useless, and she was very embarrassed. At this point, Yuma awkwardly said that it would be nice if they were a little smaller. Konami placed her hands on the protruding part of her body and smiled awkwardly. Suddenly, she realized something and looked at the guy seriously. Then her gaze fell on the protruding part of the body and thought that the holy sword was inside them. Yuma waved his hands in denial and blushed. At that moment, the demonic general addressed the girl and the boy, and his address was very angry. That's why it scared Yuma and Konami. The demonic general ordered them to stop doing certain things here and fight seriously. Yuma immediately agreed that they would not do anything like that. Vuri didn't see why not, because the sooner they got down to the dirty, the sooner he could draw his sword. The furious onslaught of a passionate demon king appeared in her mind. Konami thought that was how it worked. But Yuma continued, causing everyone to turn to look at him, saying that in other words, the holy sword is inside Kana's body. Finally, the guy realized that in order to pull out the sword, he had to touch her protruding part of the body. Ruri praised him, and Konami indignantly did not understand what she had to endure. Yuma still thought about it, because even though Konami said so, he still found it hard to believe. This shocked the girl even more. Ruri turned to the guy because she didn't understand why he was calling her that again, because they had already agreed that he would call her Ruri. Konami said that she didn't trust him. Yuma said that since there was no choice anyway, he wanted to try. Konami was surprised that he actually decided to take such a desperate step. The girl began to feel very embarrassed and eventually realized that in this case there was no choice. Yuma confirmed and looked at her. Konami touched her collar and agreed to what was to come, blushing deeply, asking him to be very gentle towards her. Yuma focused his gaze on where he needed to place his hands. He apologized to Kana and placed his palms on her protruding part of her body. The girl loudly exclaimed his name. The guy started apologizing to her again, massaging her body part. He kept apologizing and apologizing, making the girl blush even more and squirm. At the same time, the demonic general and Ruri were watching them. The warrior doubted that this was normal and even sat down next to the girl, stopping their fight. But she raised her hand, pointing at them. At the same time, she told him to pay attention, because he had a fan service scene in front of his eyes. The girl continued to repeat his name and suddenly remembered. The schoolyard flashed through her mind and how she and Raika were making palaces out of sand. Suddenly, someone spoke to them, which surprised the two little girls. It was Yuma's mother, and she wanted to know if she could ask them for something. The woman sat down next to them, and the girls waited with anticipation for her request. Yuma's mother smiled at them with warmth and tenderness and wanted to know from them if they would become his strength if her son ever got into trouble. After her question, she begged them very much about it. Little Konami stretched out her hands and agreed with a smile. But Raika was not so enthusiastic. The little girl turned to the indifferent one, saying that they were his friends, so they should definitely help him. At the same time, asking her about it again, Yuma's mother said that she was now calm, since he had such responsive friends. At the same time, the woman smiled sweetly and waved her hand at them while sitting in the sandbox. Finally, Konami remembered that she was Yuma's direct power. These memories made her remember this. It was morning and there was almost no one in the classroom, except for Raika, who was diligently doing her homework. Suddenly, something attracted her. She looked up because she realized something. She said that if time didn't go by, she would get hungry before lunch. She reached into her bag and finally pulled out 2 packages, saying that the spare bento finally came in handy. Ruri didn't understand what kind of spare bento this was. Yuma wanted to know if Raika always carried 2 lunches with her, but Konami thought she would want them to help her eat it. But Reiki spread her hands over the food, and the classroom was already empty. She was upset because there was no nagging in her direction. Yuma and Konami were still standing near the wall, and suddenly a glow began to appear from the girl, which greatly surprised Yuma. The girl's clothes were missing, or rather torn into small pieces. The girl was in a deep sleep, but Ruri was glad that Yuma's power had manifested. Suddenly, a large glowing sword appeared between the guy, who was still holding the girl tightly. Konami was still in her dream, but the guy was still shocked that they managed to summon the sword. One of the great demons wanted to make sure that this was really it. Yuma continued to hold and finally realized that it was a holy sword. Right in the center of the sleeping girl's body was that very sword. Ruri said that she understood everything, but the guy should have pulled away from Kana's protruding body part and picked up the sword. The girl also understood in her mind that Yuma had gotten into the swing of things. The guy screamed, making excuses, but then he gathered his courage and instantly became serious. He grabbed the handle of the sword and pulled it towards himself, and the girl began to fall rapidly. Konami fell right into Yuma's arms. This surprised the guy very much. He was a little scared that the girl had fainted. She was still lying with her eyes closed. All Yuma could say was, "Thank her for giving her the sword." Konami was already lying on the tile, still asleep, but covered with the boy's shirt. The great demonic general had already taken a fighting stance and was ready for another battle. He held his huge sword in his hands, and at that moment, Yuma said, holding his sword in his hands and making Ruri smile, that from now on, his opponent would be him. The guy raised his sword, showing all his readiness. The general just laughed because he thought it was funny. After all, he thought that even if Yuma got the holy sword, he still couldn't do anything. The boy was deep in thought. The combined mark of the Demon King and the hero lit up on his hand again, and Yuma realized that he only needed to cut. He held the sword with both hands, and this made Ruri smile. The warrior began to swing his sword, and the boy repeated his thought, and his sword began to glow. But the great demonic general was already pointing his sword towards him, and Yuma still thought that this would be the end for the warrior. Suddenly, the boy came out of his thoughts and shouted at the top of his voice for the sword to start cutting. This made the warrior stop. Yuma became completely serious, and his gaze was full of determination. But one of the great demonic warriors already had two halves of himself, and a bright light was visible from the crack, because the guy, after all, cut it. The two halves of one of the great demon warriors flew apart in two directions. Yuma's mouth opened in surprise. He clearly did not expect this. The guy thought that he had destroyed him and began to apologize, because this was not what he wanted at all. Ruki calmly told him to calm down, and Yuma was shaking with fear and did not understand what to do. The girl asked him to look at the place of the former warrior. The guy looked where the girl pointed and was very shocked. There was a girl hiding behind the armor who was very embarrassed and covered herself with one of the armors. Yuma did not understand who it was. Ruri happily said that it was Gra. The girl cried and said that her magic armor was broken and her existence no longer had any meaning. A weak Gra emerged from the armor. Rocky was quietly crying, sitting in front of two bento bags. She had prepared them specially, but he was still missing. A girl ran up to her, because she didn't understand why she had suddenly pulled out a bento. And two at that. It was time to take action. Many students began to gather in the classroom. Rocky noticed that he had returned and she decided to try again. The girl took one bento bag. Reika had a party hat on her head and a fake mustache above her lips. She suggested taking a red or white flag, but there was another option. Take both. At the same time, Yuma and Ruri were preparing for a new battle. The guy told the girl that they were back at it. He didn't understand what they were going to do now and tried to find an answer from Ruri. The girl thought about it and put her hand on her side. In the end, she said that she had figured out the magic armor and everything else was on them. Yuma hysterically said that she had hung too much on them. The girl who had lost all her armor said sheepishly that she had no clothes at all, and Kana's clothes were almost all in tatters. Gladorio said that it would be good to find some clothes for them first, otherwise she wouldn't be able to take them out on the street like this. The guy lowered his head and thought. Finally, he came up with an idea. Yuma also decided to undress, because he thought that it would not look strange. Ruri jokingly said that the roof quietly rustling like slate is moving slowly. It was she who addressed Yuma. Well, finally she resigned herself and said that there was nothing to be done. Then a hand reached out with a neat ball. It was Ruri, who decided to lend her battle uniform to Gledanichka. The girl held out her hands in confusion, catching the ball. The balloon started spinning and burst right in Gra's hands. She screamed so loudly because she was so scared. Clothes started appearing on her body. Glodorio didn't understand what kind of outfit it was, and her current clothes were now a rabbit costume. Yuma was shocked by such a costume because even the tail was a rabbit. The boy wanted to make sure that this was the combat form. Ruri was outraged by his reaction and wanted to understand what he thought the moon was associated with, and she herself answered that it was rabbits. And at the same time, she reminded him that she was a moon mage. Yuma continued, saying that she wouldn't go out in this outfit. Ruri added mockingly that someone didn't want to show such beauty to the world. Gray thought that everything would be fine. The girl was delighted, adding that such an outfit would also be appropriate, since it suggested something she was already looking forward to. Yuma said that was not what he had in mind. Ruri suddenly remembered something, because the guy still had the sacred sword in his hands, and the girl was already feeling uneasy. Yuma looked at the sword in his hands and was surprised, but then realized that he didn't know how to put it back. He thought that if he suddenly and forcefully thrust it into Kana, everything would work. But then Ruri answered him with obvious awkwardness, saying that he would simply destroy the girl with this. At that very moment, the sword began to glow. Yuma began to scream in shock, because his sword was completely filled with light. At that very moment, the sword disappeared. Ruri also noticed it and said that it had gone away on its own, and joked with the guy that the sword was smarter than him. Behind the girl, Kana began to wake up. The girl began to stretch and put her hand to her face, thereby shifting the shirt she was wearing. At that moment, she realized that she was wearing nothing. The girl didn't understand why she wasn't wearing any clothes, and thought that they were doing something to her. Ruri was whistling a song at that moment, showing that she had nothing to do with it, and Yuma was full of awkwardness. Reiki, who was sitting in her desk, realized that something was wrong. A message came to her phone. It was from Lena, and it said that they got carried away and Kana was left without clothes. She asked to bring a change of clothes to the roof. Right away, Rika was sent a photo of a confused and scared Kana. The girl in the class was surprised by such a photo and realized that she needed to go to the roof. She sent a reply that she would be there soon. Kana covered herself with her shirt, embarrassed, and Ruri said that they would figure it out without Yuma. The guy thanked her for that, but suddenly he realized that they had to decide what to do with Glodorio's clothes, because her outfit was too provocative. Gray thought that Yuma was unhappy that she was wearing clothes, and then she decided to undress. The guy screamed because he didn't understand what was happening to her at all if she thought like that. Glodorio turned to Ruri because she hoped that she could transform the clothes into something else, like Rabinia did. Yuma was telling her to get dressed quickly, but Ruri said that Rabinia herself was a living being. Gray hesitated and asked to think of her as a dog they were taking for a walk, because she didn't even mind being naked and wearing a collar. Yuma immediately shouted at her that he objected to it. Ruri suddenly decided to add that her clothes had a built-in camouflage function. To ordinary people, they looked like unremarkable clothes. The guy was immediately surprised that she hadn't said this before, and he realized that it could work, although it still looked the same to him. It seemed to him that it would be somehow exciting and embarrassing to appear in public like that with Glodorio, who was dressed like that. The girl became very embarrassed and sad. Tears flowed from her eyes, and she apologized. And all because she made him feel ashamed of her appearance. She promised to punish herself by tearing off her horns. Yuma asked her to stop and not do it because he was not ashamed of her. The house was alive with sounds of life. Yuma and his father were sitting at the table. The father was angry because his son said that his father had disappeared, and so that Yuma could leave early. The boy confirmed that he had said this and asked for forgiveness. The father said that this time he forgave, because his deception was quickly revealed. This happened an hour before the conversation between the father and son. An incoming call came. The man picked up the phone and apologized because the draft was still in progress. Someone on the other end of the line started laughing and said that, as he had thought, the man was very much alive. The father didn't understand what it meant or why they were calling him. The man in glasses told him, with playful sarcasm, to tell his son that this time he would pretend that he had made such an unfortunate joke about his disappearance. The father was loudly surprised and thanked him for calling. It was Yuma's class teacher who had gone to the same school as his father. The teacher accepted his thanks and said that next time he would pay for the drink. The father was shocked by this. And so, an hour later, the man cleared his throat and wanted to ask Yuma what kind of rabbit it was. The guy answered, hesitating a bit, that it all happened so chaotically. The girl in the rabbit costume was already bowing in apology. Suddenly, the father and Yuma turned around and behind them stood Ruri and Krukoni. The demoness girl happily informed everyone that they were the first to take a bath, and the little fox girl was happy that they were so clean. Suddenly, something caught Ruri's eye. She saw Glidorio in the same outfit she gave her. Kra immediately screamed in embarrassment. Father was shocked that she was also one of the 6 leaders. Glidorio began to bow and ask for forgiveness from Mrs. Rabinia. She said that she would disappear from this world right away. She had the utmost regret, and Ruri replied that she did not mind. She also added, asking her that Yuma had finally won over her. Glidorio began to cry and apologize. The guy added that somehow it happened that way in the end, because he himself did not understand how it happened. Konon told the girl to hold her nose up. Gray immediately started crying when she saw the support in her direction. The fox girl covered her nose with her hand and said that Gray smelled really bad and thought that she hadn't had a bath for a week. Glidorio grabbed her horns and started to get very worried. Because she stank, the girl wanted to punish herself, or rather, she had to do it. Yuma screamed in fear that she shouldn't do it. At the same time, classes were going on in class, and Kana was thinking only about the fact that no one would marry her anymore. After all, Yuma saw her without clothes and touched her protruding private part on her body. Kana remembered that she had bathed with Yuma until the 6th grade. The girl was immersed in memories of how the guy told her that he wanted to clean up now, so Kana should get out of the bath, and she wanted to stay in it for a while. The girl realized that this meant that there was no problem, and blushing from the hot bath, she smiled widely. Waking up from her memories, she realized that this was all terrible, because they were already adults. The class teacher turned to her, asking her to listen to him carefully and not to be distracted. Ruri, sitting behind the girl, realized that these were the pangs of realization. Ruri immediately realized that she'd forgotten to tell Kodanichka that the clothes would simply disappear after a while. At the same time, in the house, someone agreed with something, and someone hit the table with both hands, so that the mug jumped up and said that this would not work. Yuma and her father and 7 girls were sitting in the room. Alphen said that she couldn't allow one of the 6 leaders to be near Yuma. Glidoria, still sitting in her bunny costume, was sad. Alphen continued that she wanted them to immediately return her to the world she came from. Kokon counted everyone and said that there were 4 of them, while her group consisted of 3, including Glidorio, and she thought that was unfair. On the alien side were Rilfi, Alphen, Platz, and Berta, and on the friendly side were Rubinia, Kokon, and Glidorio. The fox girl praised herself, saying that she was good at arithmetic. Rilfi sat in her chair and thought about it, because she realized that there was truth in it. Alphen turned around and didn't understand whose side she was on. The older sister answered that she was only on her side, and she explained her words by saying that Glidorio was cute and needed their help. She thought about the fact that she was just saying reasonable and fair things, as always. Yuma thought that she had mixed up her thoughts with her words. Ravinia said that Glidorio without magic armor is like dorayaki cake without sweet azuki bean paste. Anko. Alphen confirmed, saying that it was okay to reason about it. Kokon suggested making her a maid. Ravinia supported her idea, calling it good. Glidorio was shocked by their negotiations and began to bow again. She thought that she would be made a maid for Lady Ravinia and began to apologize. Her suit began to blink and turn into a neat ball again. Gra continued that now she could only be a servant for carnal pleasures and asked to use her powers for their intended purpose. At that moment, the suit completely disappeared from the body. Alphen screamed because, on the contrary, it only made the situation worse and the danger level skyrocketed. Berta covered Yuma's father's eyes, and the guy himself closed his eyes, and everyone asked to cover Grasram. At the same time, in the Demon Lord's castle, several of the top demons were sitting at a round table. One of the demons remembered Glidorio and said that not only did she not stop them, but she also allowed the sacred sword to awaken. The other demons began to say that they could not simply watch events and that it was time for them to take action. The second said that if they took action, everything would end immediately. And the third realized that this would be difficult. One of the demonesses addressed everyone that right before their eyes the heroes had obtained the sacred sword. This girl did not understand what this was all about, and that demon with big horns was angry and did not understand how she dared to do this. The demoness clenched her teeth and smiled evilly. There was a roar, and the people behind the door were very scared by this noise. People did not understand what it was. Some assumed it was an explosion, but did not understand where it was. A small demon came down the stairs, shouting that something had happened in the meeting room of the 6 leaders. One of the demons wanted to know what had happened. Immediately, the little demons opened the doors and began calling their mistresses to find out if everything was okay with them. The shark-toothed devil told them that they were late, thereby confusing the servants. The girl continued, saying that these useless ladies were no more. She was sitting on a mountain of demon bodies, like a hill. The devil said that now it was her turn to deal with the hero. Alphen and Ravinia were standing very close to each other, and Yuma was trying to calm them down. The princess asked to leave the guy alone already, and the demoness said that she had just started and thought that it was actually funny. The girls were standing on the seashore, and the actions that had happened earlier. Yuma was lying on the blanket, and Ravinia was lying with him, hugging him tightly, and Kokone, who was sleeping soundly. Alphen and Berta noticed this. The princess was very shocked and opened her mouth in surprise, and her servant, on the contrary, covered it with his hand. Alphen angrily turned to Ravinia, because she did not understand what she was doing to Yuma while he was sleeping. The demoness began to open her eyes because she felt noisy. She began to rise to understand what had woken her up, and she said that she had not done anything yet. Alphen did not understand why she was speaking yet. Ravinia told her that if she wanted to be first so much, she wouldn't mind giving up her place. Alphen replied that that wasn't the problem, and now the girls were arguing, standing next to each other, and Yuma was sitting in shock from the girl's behavior. Kokone was still sleeping peacefully in the guy's arms. Alphen glared at the demoness while Ravinia smiled and had a tooth sticking out as usual. Rilfi approached them, calling the girl sisters so that they would calm down. This made them turn around with surprised faces. The elder sister said that if they quarreled, the breakfast that had been so carefully prepared for her would quickly get cold. Yuma was surprised that Rilfi had prepared breakfast. The girl answered after a little hesitation that yes and no. Lord Yuto gave the instructions, and Rilfi cooked according to the instructions, because the king should be at the head of the people. The words her sister said next hit Alphen hard, and she said that she was the only one who had no intention of feeding idlers who do nothing but eat, sleep, and make noise. Alphen fell to her knees and repeated her older sister's words that she was lazy and only making noise. At that moment, Rilfi told everyone to hurry up and go to breakfast. Everyone ran towards the kitchen, to the joyful exclamations of Kokone, who was very happy with the food. But Alphen was hanging in the arms of Berta, who was trying to figure out if everything was okay with her. Yuma walked towards the kitchen and wondered why everyone was so energetic this morning. Suddenly, Gray appeared from behind the door asking for forgiveness. She wanted to ask someone to feed her something too. Gray scared Yuma. He didn't understand what she was doing there. The girl said what Kokone said, that the closet was just right for a useless parasite like her. Or, to be precise, she sounded like she was apologizing, but the place next to Yuma was hers, and a stinker like her belonged in the closet. Yuma thought that she looked like a robot in her imagination in the form of a cat, but the guy was more surprised by the fact that she was sitting there all the time, because he was wondering where she went all the time. The girl continued to sit in the closet and said that it was very dark and narrow, and she liked it very much and she was quite comfortable. Yuma opened the closet and roughly ordered Dra to come out of the closet already. The guy immediately noticed that the girl was naked. She was lying like a pure and innocent soul. The guy said that he gave her clothes in which she could be. Gladio didn't understand what was wrong, because freeloaders weren't supposed to wear clothes. Yuma understood, but he couldn't accept it in his home. The guy finally asked to put on something, and finally go out already. The girl sighed and said that now she would have to fulfill his order anyway. The girl bent down in search of her clothes. Yuma turned away and shouted at her to at least get dressed. He had already begged her for it. Gladio began to apologize profusely for having to do this for her. Rifley, Kokone, and Revelia walked happily towards the kitchen, but Alphen was still upset and was still trying to support her mistress. Something caught Revelia's attention. She told everyone that she needed to go to the toilet. Rifley realized that she was up to something again, but the girl began to deny it. She shouted that she needed to hurry to the toilet and quickly ran in the opposite direction. Revelia turned into the room and addressed someone. The girl waited for someone to start talking. The demons began to apologize for disturbing her peace without her permission. He wanted to tell her that Karna of the dragon race was heading to his current location, and the demon decided that she should know this information. The girl said that he had made the right decision. She thanked him and said goodbye. The demon understood everything and broke the connection. Ravinia sighed and stretched. She had not expected that Kairina would decide to visit them so quickly. Almost everyone had gathered at the table for breakfast. Someone asked Konon about giving her more rice. She happily agreed and was surprised that she was even asking about it. Rifley took notice of her words, holding a huge bowl of rice in her hands. She turned to the boys who had just arrived, saying that they were late and the soup had already gotten cold. Yuma and Gladorio began to awkwardly apologize to her. The guy looked at the table and realized that Riffle had cooked it, and it looked quite appetizing. The girl handed over a plate of rice and asked Yuma to try it. He thanked her for it. He suddenly felt something and turned around abruptly, thereby confusing Riffle, who did not understand what had happened. He suddenly jumped up and ran somewhere. At the same time, the guy began to apologize and warned everyone that he would be back soon. The girls didn't understand what had happened, but he had already run out into the street and realized what had attracted him. The guy looked at the roof and was shocked. There was a huge seal on the roof of the building. Rifley realized that it was a portal, but Alphen didn't understand why they needed such a huge portal and assumed that someone would come out of it. Kokone stood joyfully, because that very portal was huge. But Ravinia was scared or irritated by the appearance of this one. Tentacles of a monster began to appear from the portal, and it began to roar. Yuma also noticed this, and said that something was beginning to appear from it. Finally, a huge foot appeared, with big claws. Everyone's mouths opened in surprise and realized what it was, and thought it was incredible. From the portal emerged huge wings, and then a tail. Finally, a huge dragon emerged. Its eyes were glowing with rage, and its claws were already ready for battle. Yuma's mouth had dropped open in surprise, and he realized it was a dragon. It was graceful, had a sinister grin, and its eyes were still filled with malice. Suddenly, he turned his attention to the people standing below, namely, Yuma. And at one point, the dragon rushed down straight at the boy, and he realized that the dragon was heading straight at him. Yuma ordered everyone to quickly run into the house because it had become too dangerous outside. The girls began to scream in fear. Yuma shielded himself from the dust the dragon kicked up so it wouldn't blind him. The dragon landed on the asphalt in front of the house and perched right in front of the boy. The dragon's behavior surprised Yuma because he did not attack, but looked at the guy with interest. And all the malice and rage that was there when he moved to them through the portal disappeared from the dragon's eyes. As it turned out, it wasn't just the guy who was surprised by the dragon's behavior. The girls behind him were also standing with their mouths open in surprise, and only Kokone was happy and greeted the big dragon. The eyes of the big creature became kinder, and suddenly, for everyone, he began to say that he was asking for forgiveness for the sudden visit. At the same time, the dragon called him a hero. This surprised Yuma, and what the dragon said shocked him even more. Alphen and Rifley didn't understand what was wrong with that. The younger sister said that it was a dragon, and didn't understand what was wrong with that, and the older sister added that, of course it would talk. Yuma's father, who was sitting at the table, also didn't understand why he was so surprised, because everyone knew about it. At least he thought so. Yuma was even more surprised by this. The dragon introduced himself, saying that his name was Marun and that he was from the line of light dragons. His face finally changed from sinister to rather cute and charming. Yuma also introduced himself and was still scared and awkward. The dragon wanted to start a conversation. He wanted to know if Kayarna of the Dark Dragon race had come here yet. Alphen suddenly exclaimed sharply. She did not expect the Dark Dragon to arrive. Yuma did not understand what a Dark Dragon meant. Alphen continued to explain to him that there are many different types of dragons. There are dragons that live peacefully alongside humans and other magical creatures. There are those who act on instinct. wanting to destroy everything in their path. And there are those who have severed ties with their world and watched the passage of time. The dragon continued by saying that some dragons take the power of humans, and they are called light dragons. Others draw power from magical creatures, and these dragons are called dark dragons. Yuma assumed that the Kairina the dragon was looking for was Rabinia's subordinate. Rabinia replied that she spoiled her in every way when Kairina was under her leadership, and she never even listened to what Rabinia told her. Rifley thought about the name. The girl realized that she had heard it somewhere before. Ravinia became interested in her thoughts. And finally, the girl realized where she had heard this name. Rifley assumed that this was the same Kairina, who was the same dragon princess of destruction. Ravinia laughed and stuck out her tongue, because the girl hit the nail on the head. The elder sister realized that this was Princess Kairina, and her power was so destructive that even the magicians were afraid of her. She ran up to the princess, thereby scaring her greatly, and added to her words that this was no longer a joke, and that it was too dangerous for her, as the heir to the throne, to be in this world. Rifley continued, saying that she needed to return to their world quickly and not return to this one, adding that she was just in the way anyway. Alphen didn't understand why. In moments of danger, she always treated her as a nuisance. Yuma's father found this interesting because the story was gaining momentum with the sudden appearance of the dragon princess. Kokone said that in that case, she should eat more harumaki with meat. Meanwhile, in the city, or more precisely in the city diner, sat a devil who was eating a plate of ramen very quickly. Several visitors of this place stared at the girl, because there were already several empty plates of food on the girl's table. And having finished another portion, she asked the old man for more. The man said that he was of course glad to see such an appetite, but he doubted that everything was okay with her. The girl was surprised by this, but asked him not to worry. She put a bag on the table from which a handful of coins fell. The girl said that she had plenty of money, and she said this with complete confidence. The man started denying it, because he wasn't worried about the money. He was worried that she would burst from so much food, and if she got sick, he could give her medicine. The girl asked him not to worry, because she could eat as much as she wanted. She said it with such enthusiasm and willingness to eat everything he had. The men sitting in the diner thought she was a foreigner and was sightseeing. This caught the girl's attention. She turned around in her chair to face them and said that she really just needed to meet someone and have a heart-to-heart talk. The demoness put her hands behind her head and said that he still couldn't understand where her friends were now. The men started laughing and thought she was really bad with directions. The girl replied that it was her talent, and they started laughing again and said that it was okay to say that because she probably didn't even know where she was right now. Still in the same diner, the demoness was already apologizing with anger and sadness. She leaned against the bar counter because she had not thought at all that she would not be able to use her money here. The bag of coins was still lying on the table. The men sitting at the table were discussing these coins. One of them said that even if they were not in circulation here, it was possible to get money for the gold they were made of. The coin man didn't understand what it was and thought she had stolen it. The other said it didn't concern her at all. The old man said that since she didn't have any money, she could leave a receipt because he had a lot of visitors. The girl said that she couldn't do that to him. At the same time, she started to take off her jacket and said that in that case she would pay differently. The men at the table thought the man was very lucky and they wouldn't tell his wife. The old man at the bar asked them to stop because he couldn't do it. At another table sat a man with glasses. He stood up and addressed the girl, thereby angering the demoness. The man with glasses had a great job for her, and the man smiled scary. At the same time, in Yuma's house, in the courtyard, everyone was still standing next to the dragon. Yuma said that in any case, Karina had not yet managed to reach them. The dragon replied that he had no doubt that she was already heading here. Alphen said that until she showed up, there was nothing they could do. Rofi added that if they went looking for her, they would bring trouble on themselves. The dragon was a little confused, saying that they were thinking correctly. Yuma's father said that first of all, they shouldn't stand there like idols, and they should go eat already, because everything will get cold now. Yuma supported and said that first of all, they should have breakfast. Rofi turned to the dragon and smiled and invited him to have breakfast with them. The dragon was very surprised that he was allowed to, and he honestly said that all this time he felt such an appetizing smell and restrained himself as best he could. And of course she would gladly accept her offer. Kokon raised her hand with chopsticks and apologized because she wasn't going to give her food, and she had to find another simpleton who would share it with her. Suddenly, the dragon grabbed Kokone's head. This shocked Yuma, and he started screaming her name to hear an answer. Everyone started screaming at Maru, saying that it wasn't food and asking him not to eat it and spit it out. The dragon took his mouth away from Kokone, who said that she almost lost her life. The girl was all wet from the dragon's drool and sat on his knees disappointed. Maru apologized and said that she smelled so good that she did it by accident. Ravinia said that she definitely did it on purpose. Suddenly, a head appeared from behind the door apologizing. It was Kana, who still didn't understand what was going on. The girl said that it was time to go to school. Yuma was surprised that it was already time to go. His father told him to go to school and they would sort it all out. The boy immediately jumped up and very shamefacedly apologized for leaving it all to them. Ravinia approached Kokone, telling her to take a bath first, since she was covered in drool. The girl sat sadly, agreeing with every word Ravinia said. Kokone turned to the girl and said that it was because of the dragon that this had happened to her. She was clearly offended by this huge dragon for treating her like that. Rifley suggested that the dragon take his true form, or more precisely, that he do it as quickly as possible. After all, the dragon form attracts too much attention in this world. The dragon immediately agreed. The dragon began to glow with a bright light. A small, neat girl began to appear from the huge dragon. She still had the dragon's wings and tail. Maru wanted to know if she could take a bath with Kokone because she was flying so fast that she was sweating and feeling uncomfortable. This puzzled the girl. Kokone thought that she wanted to boil it and eat it, and Maru smiled sweetly and said that this was indeed the case, because it would taste much better that way. The cat girl approached Gra, asking her to go to the bath with her. She didn't understand why she had to go. Kokone said that if anything happens, she will sacrifice her. Grea said that she would like such a game. Kan walked along feeling a little embarrassed, and said that today was such a noisy morning. Yuma, also walking awkwardly next to her, agreed and added that yesterday was a little different. Suddenly, he remembered something. Kana immediately asked what happened. Yuma remembered that he forgot to tell his father and all the other girls about the sacred sword. He thought about telling them after school, and he told the girl to come too. Kana immediately started to worry. She clearly didn't want him to tell. Suddenly, the girl thought about what could be. She imagined Yuma entering the common room with her and asking for everyone's attention, and how he was going to pull out the sacred sword. In her mind, Yuma was very happy, trying to show how he was getting it. And he was holding Kana's shoulder, who was completely confused and embarrassed. Everyone was watching this in her thoughts, and Ravinia felt genuine interest in this. Yuma's father told him to knead harder, and Alphen only said that something was not going well and was not working. Rilf was shocked by such a trick from Yuma. Coming out of her thoughts, Kana immediately blushed at her own thoughts. She thought that if he did that, it would be so indecent. The girl was depressed by her own thoughts, and Yuma walked, thinking, and Reiki followed her, who did not understand what was wrong with the guys. Yuma kept thinking about if the sacred sword was in Kana's possession. His face was puzzled. He was trying to figure out who the dark sword was then. Behind him and Kana was Rocky, who might be the dark sword. That same morning, a girl approached the temple. She raised her hand and called for an emergency meeting. Aina called for everyone to gather. The little girl, like a Disney princess, called to her many birds, cats, and dogs. Aina gave instructions that according to the message of bird number 2, dragons have already reached this world. This message was conveyed by one of the helpful birds who saw the light dragon in the courtyard of Yuma's house. Aina said that everyone should join forces and find the dark dragon, and then they should report to her. Aina shouted at them to start doing this. Suddenly, she thought about it. The girl realized that she had to hurry, but she didn't understand where Yuma was. The city bathhouse was peaceful and quiet. Its windows overlooked a beautiful view of the mountains. Maru sat in the bath and smiled. She was glad that there were good baths in this world too. Kokone and Gra watched her menacingly. Maru turned to Kokone because she was trying to explain that she wasn't going to eat her, and she didn't have to be so afraid of her. Kokone herself denied it. She didn't know when her instincts would kick in, and she warned that she wouldn't be fooled that easily. Gra said, with all her love, that if she wanted to eat it like that, she could slobber all over it. Maru said that she didn't feel like it. She thought that grad didn't look tasty. The girl's self-esteem was greatly damaged by this, and she began to descend under the water, repeating the dragon's words. Kokone looked at her with incomprehension, and suddenly she became furious. She warned Maru that she would make a preemptive strike, and she began to jump straight at the dragon in the style of a fighting cat. This surprised the dragon girl very much. At that moment, Kokone caught up with Maru and fell on top of her. The cat girl grabbed the dragon by the tail and told the girl that the tail is the Achilles heel of dragons. Maru made a face and asked to stop. And all because if she touched her tail, then her hormones would increase. And accordingly, there would be an interesting reaction of the body. The girl started biting her finger, asking him to stop. At the same time, the girl said that this was not right. Kokone did not understand what had happened. She looked at the girl with incomprehension. At that very moment, an old man knocked on their door. He addressed them, saying to find out when they were going to leave. And at that moment, Kokono's cry was heard. Who knew that the dragon wanted to eat her? Maru replied that it was she who started touching her tail. The man behind the door began to worry and knock on their door more furiously. Eventually, the man opened the door and didn't understand what they were doing there. He saw something he shouldn't have. Little Kokone was being attacked by the dragon, Maruru. All the man could say was wow, and at that same moment, the same little plats closed the eyes of this strange man. At the same time, Rifley, Alphen, and Ravinia were sitting in the kitchen. And so Rifley decided to start. She turned to Ravinia, trying to find out if she could convince Kyrina to be their ally. Ravinia replied that she shouldn't even think about it because Kyrina doesn't listen to her at all. She suggested setting the light dragon on the dark one. Since she came to them herself, Rilfi wanted to see if it would help, but Ravinia herself didn't know if it would work or not. Alphen didn't like the way they were thinking. After all, at this rate, she would be forced to return to another world, and the girl thought about the fact that she would have to say something that would correspond to her status as a princess. Rifley turned her head towards her little sister, thinking that she had some ideas. This shocked Alphen, and she tried to say something. Her older sister, without giving her a chance to say anything, said herself that, as she thought, she needed to return to their world. Alphen, already crying, said that they were not talking about that now. Rifley said that they had already discussed this and wanted to make sure, thinking that Alphen thought Rifley was joking. But to her regret, this was not the case. The little princess cried and asked him to stop trying to get rid of her. Yuma's father said that his son would somehow cope with the danger. Rifley turned to the man puzzled, trying to explain. He asked not to underestimate him, because his son was a capable boy, and he turned to the girl to get approval for his words. But father was looking forward to a tough fight. Ravinia laughed loudly and Rifley exhaled. It seemed to her that they would not cope here without her sister. At the same time, the shark-toothed demoness asked everyone to crowd around her. The little kids started to crowd around the girl from all sides and try to climb on each one. The demoness was in the Hanamoro kindergarten. The teacher asked for forgiveness for such an unexpected request because all the teachers suddenly caught a cold. The girl replied that they should not worry, because she could handle the kids on her own. The main teacher in the kindergarten was that same tall and serious man in glasses. The children were surprised at how tall he was. The demoness noticed that one boy was standing at a distance, and this is what caught her attention. The boy was standing thoughtfully and shyly. The girl squatted in front of the boy because she did not understand why he was standing alone. The boy exclaimed sharply, turning to the teacher. He abruptly asked her to become his bride and handed her a flower, thereby surprising the girl. The shark-toothed demoness apologized to him because she was only interested in strong guys. After her words, the boy began to have tears in his eyes. But the girl added that if he becomes strong, then she will think about his offer. At the same time, the girl began to smile, showing that she was not joking. The boy happily wanted to make sure that this was true. The demoness replied that she was immeasurably strong. And as it turned out, this boy later became the strongest fist fighter in the world. The light dragon had the delicious kokone in his mind. She thought about how he had tasted the deliciousness from another world for the first time. And now he thinks about her every day. The dragon entered the room and asked the people to appear again. She said that her name was Maru and that she was a representative of the light dragons. Kokone told her that if she was done with this, then she should return to her world quickly. Maru objected to the girl and said that Kirinya was definitely heading their way, so she couldn't leave them alone. At the same time, Kokoni hid behind Ravinia's back to protect her. Alphen suddenly looked at the magazine questioningly and asked what it was. It turned out to be a monthly issue of a guide to otherworldly cuisine from Tokyo. The girls stood up together and began to ask Maru, surprised, if she'd like to eat, and Glodorio asked if she could lie down to sleep already. Maru snatched the magazine from Alphen, surprising her, and said in a fussy tone that she would take care of it after they dealt with Kayarna. Rifley asked the girl if she wanted to go for a walk around the city afterwards. Alphen supported her sisters, saying that it was right and she needed to pamper herself. Ravinia suggested that she was looking forward to it. Kokon told her to hurry up and go home, and Glodorio asked again if she could go to bed already. The demoness suggested combining business with pleasure and going to look for Karina, and at the same time to look around the city. Maru said that she was not against it, but she did not know the area at all. Ravinia told her not to worry about it. And then she said that Kokon would show her around. Kokon, after her words, was shocked and bewildered by what she heard. Maru was happy to hear this, and said that in that case everything was fine. Kokone approached Ravinia and thought that she hated her. The girl did not understand why she chose her, because Ravinia was the most suitable candidate for this role. Kokon hugged Ravinia and said that she only knew the way from her house to the store. Maru laughed at her behavior. Alphen suddenly thought that this was a chance for her to show her usefulness. Rifley suddenly turned to Alphen and said that she hadn't left the house at all in the last few days either, and that's why she had even gained weight. The girl was very hurt and angry by this question. Alphen exclaimed that it was not true, but then Rifley took out and placed the scales in front of her, and the princess turned away from Rifley and said that she was bad. She only laughed at this. Berta and Platz, overhearing Kokone and Ravinia's conversation, said that they could be useful in this matter, since they constantly have to go shopping for groceries. Kokon, hearing this, was very happy that she would not have to spend time with Maru. Kokon thanked Bertha for agreeing to do this job for her. Bertha said that she did not need to be thanked. Yuma was at school. Ruri called out to him and said hello. The girl came very close to the boy and looked him straight in the eyes. Yuma didn't understand what she wanted from him. Ruri said that she had something to talk to him, thereby confusing the guy. The girl led the guy to the roof. Yuma did not understand why they were going there, but the guy continued to follow Ruri. There was no one on the roof, so they went there. The boy and the girl were climbing the stairs leading to the roof. Yuma assumed that Ryuri wanted to ask for her combat form back. The girl looked at the guy and said that she wanted to ask him about this too. Suddenly, she threw him a small black ball and told him to catch it. Having caught the ball, the boy began to examine it. He did not ask what it was. Ryuri said that it was Glodori's armor. She took it. The boy was surprised that there was armor in such a small ball. Ryuri told him that this was all that was left of the armor. Yuma was very surprised. The girl told him that it happened. Her magic scythe ate everything else. The guy said that he did not think it was an accident. Yuma put the remaining piece of the armor in his pocket and said that he would give it to Glodorio, then said that he wanted to ask Ruri something else. The girl apologized to him and said that today she would only answer indecent questions. Yuma asked the girl who was the owner of the dart sword. The girl suddenly exclaimed that her love attack had not worked at all. Ruri asked the boy if he remembered what he was doing when he tried to pull the sacred sword out of Kana. The guy thought about it and concluded that the dark sword is in someone who has a large personal body part. Ruri said that the guy very easily threw away all the girls with a small body part and asked not to make such a movement with his hands anymore. Ruri turned to the guy and said that she was always interested in something. This puzzled the guy. But Reiki stood and looked at her body part, realizing that she had completely normal ones. The girl continued talking, asking if he was okay with Reiki following them. The boy looked back and was surprised that she was indeed standing behind him. Yuma was shocked and thought that Reiki had heard everything they were talking about here. The girl stood there in confusion. She was still silent and didn't say anything. She eventually turned to the fence and touched it, saying that the sky was unusually blue today. Yuma was surprised by such a crude way of avoiding the question. At the same time, in the kindergarten, the little children began to go home and say goodbye to their teachers, and they waved back, expecting to see them tomorrow. The demoness said goodbye to the last children and asked them to be careful on their way home. A strict, tall man in glasses, or simply put, a teacher, said that they had done a good job. The man suggested having a drink somewhere. He said he was treating her. The demoness apologized and said she had something else to do today. The teacher was upset. He felt sorry for her, and now he wanted to know if she would come tomorrow. The girl did not know how to say it and decided to rely on fate, because as it would indicate, so it would be. 3 teachers stood at the threshold of the kindergarten, and a black cat watched them. At the same time, Maru, along with Platz and Bertha, walked through the market, looking at Koraki for 105 yen. The dragon was curious about how they tasted. Bertha wanted to know how Mrs. Maru ate so much. Platz sheepishly said that if she got hungry, she could try to eat kokone again. The dragon said it was the truth. Bertha tried to ask her to keep it reasonable. There were children standing around the corner, laughing nastily. They went towards the maids and called for a wind that lifted the girls' skirts. The children began to examine the girls' underwear. Platz looked at them angrily, thinking that something was wrong with them. They were already running towards the 3rd girl. Maruru stood with food in her hands. She ate Koraki and liked it. The children had already run up to her and started calling for the wind. A dragon tail began to appear from under the girl's cloak. Maru did not understand what had happened and continued to eat her treat. The children were frightened by this turn of events and opened their mouths in surprise. They started screaming in fear and calling the girl a monster. Maruru didn't understand what had happened, and Berta stood there irritated and embarrassed. Little legs started running along the road. It was Ina, who was in a great hurry and was very serious. She turned into a dark alley and waited. She started to turn her head because she lost contact with Meow Meow Third somewhere here. Suddenly, she looked around the corner and saw a cat. Someone said that she was waiting. It was a demoness with shark teeth. She was trying to figure out who was sniffing out information about her, and as it turned out, it was a girl mage. The demoness was sitting on a trash can and holding a black kitten in her hands. She thought Ravinia had ordered her to do it. Ina realized she had fallen into a trap. The girl remained silent, but then answered that Ravinia had asked her to do it. Suddenly, the demoness's eye opened and took the form of a dragon's eye, and she said that Ina was lying. The demoness had dragon vision, which allows her to see where the truth is and where the lie is. The demoness grabbed the lid of the trash can and realized that the hero had definitely sent her. She lifted the trash can above her and threw it towards Ina. Shark Teeth wanted her to tell everything while she was still kind. Ina didn't understand how she did it. The demoness wanted to know where the hero was. The little girl realized that she couldn't escape. The sound of approaching footsteps was heard next to him. Someone was enjoying a chicken. As it turned out, it was Yuma's father. He ate a piece of chicken impaled on a toothpick. The girls looked at him in confusion. Ina found support, realizing that it was Uncle Yuto. But the demoness clenched her teeth, showing her complete displeasure. Yuto tried to understand what was going on here. He said that it was actually a crime to hurt little girls. The demoness grinned evilly because she realized who he was. Yuma's father said that he would buy time here for now, and Ina should run. The girl agreed and started running. The man watched the girl run away and smiled sincerely. Now the demoness addressed him, calling him an old man, but he continued to eat his chicken. The girl thought that he had overestimated his capabilities. Yuto asked her to wait with a genuine grin, saying that he only meant that it would only buy time. The man raised his wand and it glowed. Suddenly, the stick took the form of a spear, and Yuto caught it deftly with one hand. And he said, with the same smirk, that he was just a minor character. And that's why, even if he screws up, it's okay, because it will still be a good scene. The demoness thought about it. She became very interested, because this is a battle of a fierce dragon against a former hero, and it will be a brutal battle. Ina smiled sweetly and called on everyone to smile together. On her lap sat a black cat, which was sleeping peacefully and purring. Yuto and Kairina stood opposite each other and prepared for the upcoming battle. Kairina asked the man if he was a former hero. Yuto told her not to be impudent until he introduced himself. Kairina didn't understand what he was saying, looking at him angrily. She said that girl Ina called him Uncle Yuto. Yuto thought about it and noticed that the girl was very attentive. But it seemed to him that she was a little narrow-minded. Kairina said that it was just right. The girl said that if Yuto was a former hero, He would avenge the old man. Kirina meant her father, and he did not understand what she was talking about. Yuto immediately realized that Kairina was this man's daughter. But he didn't understand what these two had planned, because he was still alive. And the demoness's father was angry and scared, because he didn't know how else to explain it to him. The man told Kairina that in that case, he would have nothing to do with it. Yuto turned around and was about to leave. But then Kairina exclaimed angrily and asked if he really wanted to run away. The man turned around and asked her with a smirk if she felt sorry. The girl was very angry and started growling. Yuto told the girl that this place was not very good and invited her to follow him. In any case, it was spacious, he said. Kairina thought about it. Yuto was making her very angry. She noticed that the man had his back turned to her and was defenseless. This was a convenient moment for her. The girl smiled sarcastically and said, "How interesting." And at that moment, not so far away, Kana was walking with Yuma and Raiki, discussing how she would get the holy sword. The girl thought that this would happen in front of everyone and decided to clarify this with the Yumos. The guy was confused by this question. He said that it is not worth doing this in front of people. Kana said that there are times when she becomes indecent, so she thought so. Suddenly, the guy noticed someone and said to look. Aina stood in front of them. She was scared. The girl started crying and ran to Yuma. The guy asked her what happened. The girl told Yuma that his father had a fight with some scary woman. The boy asked who this woman was. The girl said that she thought this woman was a dragon. The guy couldn't believe the girl's words. He was very scared. He asked if this was the Kairina that Maru had told him about. Then he asked where she was now and asked her to show him. Kirina and Yuto were already standing in a new place and were ready to fight. It was a construction site, and the man asked if she needed to put up a barrier here. The girl said that unlike demons, she does not use barriers. The man said, sticking out his tongue, that in that case, he had already retired and asked to be easy on him. The girl smiled sarcastically and said that, unfortunately, her principle was to spare no one in battle. The man jumped back when he saw the girl's large hands appear. Kairina said that she does not spare especially such skilled opponents. The girl started attacking the man, and he started defending himself. He parried many blows and was surprised at how strong the girl was. Yuto decided to attack back, but he missed and couldn't land a blow. He was very surprised by this. Suddenly, the girl attacked him again. This time, the man dodged her blow. The girl did not expect it, and it made her even more angry. Yuto began to attack again. This time, the man managed to hit Kairina. She was very disappointed and angry. The man smiled slyly at her. Kairina noticed that Yuto used the spear as a trick and said that he was a skilled old man. Yuto said that he used a trick because she had such monstrous strength. The girl began to laugh maliciously. She said that it was not bad at all, and she was already getting excited. A menacing smile appeared on her face, which showed her entire mood. The man thought about how dangerous it was because she was also obsessed with battles, and whether he really needed to deal with her. And a long time ago, there was a guy like that. Yuto and Kairina were ready to start fighting again. The man asked the girl if it was time for them to start and said that he was tired. The girl told him to stop being stupid. Yuto said that he was just warming up. Suddenly, the girl decided to attack him again. She rushed towards Yuto at high speed. The man managed to defend himself and parry the girl's blow, and he called her a bad lady. Kairina flew back a few meters and fell. Falling to the ground, the girl began to reason that it was obvious, as expected from the former hero. Suddenly, something caught her attention. She saw a plucked flower lying next to her. Suddenly, Kairina remembered the little boy holding that flower. She thought about how she was no longer the strongest. And then she suddenly remembered that this was the face of the boy she had met. Yuto stood there in surprise, holding a spear in his hands. Kairina stood there in rage. She was a demonic dragon, and she had the rage of a decisive battle. Yuma's father didn't understand what was going on. She was even a little scared. Yuto hoped that she wasn't going to fight him in this mode, but Kairina was already fully prepared for battle and was already in a fighting stance. She immediately ran towards Yuto. The man tried to fight off her blow, but Kairina struck more and more blows. She partially began to take the form of a dragon. She began to grow a tail and claws, and the girl also got wings. Ito tried to endure more blows because Kairina's claws were already flying at him. There was a vicious grin on her face. The girl hit the man right in the stomach. The man's spear broke and he doubled over in pain. The girl threw the man into the wall. Yuto began to curse. His shirt was torn where he had been hit, and he was holding his side. Kairina flew up on her dragon wings and showed her rage towards him with all her appearance. She told him that was all. Yuto began to think about his wife, Grisaria. He thought about finally being able to see her again. The man closed his eyes, but he opened it immediately, feeling someone next to him. In front of him stood little Aina, who opened her arms to protect Yuma's crippled father. The girl shouted for her to stop because the fight was already over. Kairina did not understand why she was stopping her and asked her not to be stupid. Yuto told the little girl Aina that he didn't need help. Kairina confirmed that they weren't done yet, and that once they started burning, the flames would never stop. Someone said that he would be her opponent then. This made Kairina turn around. She was still very angry and furious, and Aina was scared. As it turned out, it was Yuma, Ryuki, and Kana. Yuto told the guy that he was late, calling him a hero. But Yuma said that he was the opposite, just in time. Kairina started laughing, saying that the hero had finally arrived. Yuma stood ready to fight. The girl looked at Aina with irritation, who was already standing completely serious. But her face showed that the girl was scared. Kairina said that this little girl was bothering her. She also asked to take him and leave. Aina took Yuta under her arm and ran away from the place of the upcoming battle. And Kairina said that the hero should get ready. She wanted it to end quickly. The girl was fully prepared for this and had a very sinister smile. Yuma understood something, but now he didn't know what to do. Kairina didn't understand what had happened. Yuma started to apologize. He didn't take the sacred sword, and so he asked her to wait a little. Kairina froze in a fighting stance and was irritated. The guy ran towards Kana and started asking her for help. The girl didn't understand what had happened, and Kairina stood there in the same bewilderment. Yuma asked her to give her the sacred sword. Kana stood completely paralyzed, repeating his words. The girl began to remember what happened last time and covered her personal place from strangers. She realized that it was somehow too crowded here. Yuma began to look around, and suddenly, something caught his attention. He noticed a janitor's booth. The guy immediately grabbed Kana by the hand and dragged the girl by the hand towards this booth. Kana asked to wait for him. She also asked not to tear her clothes. Yuma understood everything, and his face was the same serious face. Kana was screaming at him to wait because she wanted to at least prepare a little. Kairina didn't understand what they were doing. Reiki stood near the booth. All she could do was hear Kana's cries, saying that she would take it off herself and repeating this several times. Kairina also heard that they were going to film something there. Various sounds were coming from the booth. This confused the demoness, but only attracted Reiki more. The demoness began to curse, and she became even more furious than before. Yuta covered Ina's ears so that she would not hear anything, and at that very moment, Reiki began to peek through the window of this booth. Kana's clothes were on the table, and in this booth, Yuma was apologizing to her a lot. The guy was standing next to her near the window, and they were both embarrassed. Kana started asking Yuma to stop, but he continued to touch the girl's indecent parts. Raki was still standing by the window and watching them. Yuma started shouting for the holy sword to come out quickly. Kana said that he could pull it out already. She repeated loudly for him to pull it out already. Reiki was very surprised by the behavior of these two, but suddenly a huge pillar of light appeared from the booth, which flooded the entire street. Yuma stepped over the threshold of this booth. He was angry and asked for forgiveness for the wait. He said that he was her opponent. Kairina stood completely stunned by what happened, said that everything was fine, and the father was surprised by the appearance of the sacred sword. The protagonist, tense, stands armed with his sword and asks the opponent if her name is true, Kairina. She stands with a dragon hand and clenches her fist. She smiles maliciously and is ready to attack the protagonist. The protagonist, with a serious expression on his face, shouts that if she continues to rage, then the protagonist will use force. The protagonist is serious. Kairina smiles sarcastically and excitedly, and then madly says that this is great, and also adds that she hopes that the main character is ready. The girls slammed her fists against each other, and a ringing sound was heard. She straightens up and tells the protagonist that the protagonist was very good. She asks if the protagonist will entertain her. The girl put one hand on her hip and pointed to the side with the other. The protagonist continues to stand in front of her in a stupor and ready to fight. His body, hands, and sword begin to shake. The protagonist is shaking terribly, and even though he said it, he is not sure that he can defeat her, since his father himself could not do it. Sweat is pouring off him, and his mouth is slightly open from stress. His whole body is shaking violently. Suddenly, Karina starts attacking from below. She lunges and heads straight towards the protagonist. The protagonist only grips his sword tighter and opens his mouth in shock. The protagonist doesn't understand why the girl is moving so fast. She hits the protagonist with her powerful hands, and the protagonist turns slightly to the side. The protagonist clenches his teeth because the girl almost hit him. However, her dragon hand misses him. The protagonist looks away at his sword in horror and fear, and Karina starts attacking again without stopping. Her face is filled with anger and a desire to kill the protagonist. She hits from several sides with both hands and screams to receive. The protagonist is very surprised and does not understand what to do now. The protagonist just stands and screams, not trying to counterattack or defend himself in any way. The protagonist holds the sword tensely in front of him, and then looks up when the attacks stop. He looks at the girl in surprise. Karina steps away. Orna sighs tiredly and asks why the protagonist simply defends himself. The girl says with displeasure that this is a disappointment for her. The protagonist breathes tiredly and asks what's the matter. Beads of sweat are running down his face. Karina put her hands on her hips and put one leg up. She looks at the protagonist and thinks about what to do in this situation. She raises her hand and tells him that she will swat him in one go, so let him attack first. As she says this, the girl sighs. The protagonist immediately gets scared and backs away, asking why she is so abrupt. He was very surprised by such an abrupt statement from the girl. The protagonist begins to think hard that he has no other choice. His face becomes serious and a drop of sweat runs down his face. The protagonist remembers and understands that it was like during the battle with Gradrio. He tensely clenches his teeth. The protagonist grips his huge sword tightly. The protagonist jumps and swings his sword. He heads straight towards the girl, wanting to attack her. The protagonist flies past her and stops behind the girl, waiting for the consequences. Karina stands in the same pose and does not even turn to him. Everyone looks at him and waits for what will happen next. No one understood what was happening and why the girl continued to stand. The main character gets up and turns to her with anticipation too. He was very surprised. Karina calls the young man with displeasure and rudeness, and then asks if this is really such a peculiar joke. She smugly puts her hands on her hip and looks at him expectantly. The protagonist recalls his previous attacks and is sure that this style was there back then, and it absolutely worked. The young man is embarrassed, recalling these moments. Karina indignantly asks what kind of breeze it was and whether this is really all that the main character is capable of. The protagonist looks on in horror and wonders if it really didn't work. He was incredibly shocked and beads of sweat were running down his face. The main character screams to the girl in horror that he wants to try again. The dragon girl is very surprised. She grabs the sharp blade of the sword. The protagonist tries to swing his sword, but Karina holds on to the blade. The sword starts shaking in the protagonist's hands. Karina sighs and apologizes irritably, then says that his attempts are really useless. She abruptly lets go of his sword. The protagonist jumps aside. Karina is surprised by the young man's abrupt actions. The protagonist understands that the girl is too strong and he cannot defeat her. He looks at the girl with a serious expression on his face. The protagonist still stands in a strange pose in front of her, holding the sword. Karina continues to keep her hands on her hips. The protagonist's father admits to his companion that the situation is really very bad. The little girl looks at the man and asks if the protagonist's father really thinks that way. The protagonist's father explains, looking at the girl, that the mode she entered halves the holy power. Karina really does stand in a demonic form. She smiles smugly, and an aura blazes around her body. The protagonist's father tells him that when he was young, he could fight with a sword and distract attention with Mei arrows, but now he can't use magic. The girl looks at the man in surprise. The girl starts thinking hard about what she can do in this situation and lowers her eyes. Her face looks quite tense. She clenches her fists and excitedly asks the protagonist's father what if Yuma's brother had a holy sword and a magic sword at the same time. The protagonist's father looked at her in surprise. The protagonist's father is surprised by his companion's words. The protagonist's father replies in surprise that then he would have had the opportunity to defeat his opponent. He suddenly has some kind of insight. He thinks about Kairina. The man asks Aina that if you think about it, then she was a demon. He remembers Karina's previous appearance, and Aina inhales awkwardly, understanding what they are talking about. He starts to jerk Ina sharply and shouts to her that of course he is right, and Ina gets scared and screams from such sharp movements. They look at each other for a long time, trying to grasp one thought. Then the protagonist's father asks her if she knows where the magic sword is. Hearing about the magic sword, the girl smiles awkwardly. She smiles sweetly and warmly, and then answers in an uncertain voice that she does not know where the magic sword is. The protagonist's father calms down. He sighs and replies that it is clear to him. He says that everything cannot be so simple. Aina awkwardly asks for forgiveness. The girl lowers her eyes to the floor and thinks to herself that the main character's father really scared her with his behavior. At some point, the protagonist's father starts petting Ina and saying that she is definitely good. He smiles hopelessly. He asks for forgiveness and understands that she was afraid of him. The girl shudders from the touch. She blushes and, with her eyes downcast, says that it's nothing. The protagonist's father continues to stroke the girl's head. The girls sit at a common table and enjoy the deliciously prepared food, saying that the food in this world is quite tasty. Malul agrees with them, eating a pie. Malud takes a bite of the juicy bun and at some point screams, attracting everyone else's attention. The girls jump and look straight at Malulu. The girls ask Malulu in fear what had happened and why she had suddenly screamed. Malulu looked at the girls in fear. Malulu excitedly replies that she just felt a short wave from Karina. The princess twitches in fear. They have already stopped eating. Malulu, with a serious expression, says that the wave is very strong and must have entered the fury mode of the decisive battle. Beads of sweat appeared on the girl's face, and wrinkles appeared. Another girl asks if this means she is fighting someone. Her guess was probably correct. The little girls are excited about the game and shout that they got the item, and then simply and calmly add that, by the way, the protagonist hasn't returned yet. The princess and the others are horrified by the information. It seems they figured it out. The princess stands up, slams her hand on the table, and shouts that she can't stay away. The girl clenches her fist and tells Malul to immediately send the girl to the protagonist. She was so tense and nervous that her clothes tore in place and showed all her assets to the girls. The girl was surprised by what happened. All the girls started blushing. Some of them openly stare. Some hide their gaze, but still see. The princess stands awkwardly in place and doesn't know what to do. She smiles nervously. Malulu tells her that she better not go on a diet. The girl first starts to shed tears and cover herself with her hands, and then says that it's not like that. She's just worn out her clothes. She turns red. The maid next to her tells the princess frankly that, unfortunately, she only put on these clothes today. The princess still resists and screams in shame that everything is wrong. She begins to cry even harder. At this time, Karina looks at Yuma with disappointment, and then waves her hand and says that he has had enough. She then asks the young man to give the holy sword to his father, a former hero. The protagonist's father smiles and replies that he doesn't need Yuma's sword. The protagonist says that, of course, compared to his father, he is very young. With these words, he begins to squeeze his sword even harder. Kirina starts looking at the protagonist in surprise. The protagonist continues and says that this is why he can't just leave. His eyes sparkled with confidence. The main character looks at her confidently, and at some point Kirina tenses up. After silence, she only briefly says that it is clear to her. She then demands with a smile that the main character then show his true self. The girl smiled slyly and showed her dragon fist. Suddenly, the protagonist's father shouts at the protagonist to first feel the magic sword echoing back to him. The protagonist listens attentively, paying attention to him. He shudders at the thought. The protagonist exhales from the realization and says that it is true. Kiarina also hears the advice of the protagonist's father and does not understand what he is talking about and what other magic sword. Kirina smiles sarcastically and addresses the protagonist, saying that if he has something special, then let him lay it out. The girl called the young man with her dragon hand. The protagonist turns his back to the girl and shouts that he understands, and asks her to wait for him in that case. The girl agrees, but tells him to be quick with it. The young man thrusts the sacred sword into the ground. He closes his eyes and begins to meditate. His entire face tenses from the action. The protagonist raises his hand and summons Ravid's magic sword. A powerful airflow forms around the young man's body. The protagonist calls upon the king who controls the devil and asks him to respond to the young man's call. The young man continued to raise his hand and confidently pronounced these words. However, nothing happens, and everyone looks at the protagonist in complete silence, waiting. The protagonist stands with his hand raised and hopes for success. Tiari now starts to get angry and asks the protagonist if he is really playing with her. The protagonist awkwardly asks her to wait a little longer. He continues to hold his hand above his head in panic, and beads of sweat are running down his face. He asks again for the magic sword to appear in front of him. Aina looks awkwardly and thinks that the magic sword is not ready yet. Aina was tense, but suddenly she looked away. Then someone came up to them. Rika. Ina was very surprised when she looked at her. Rika stood and did not understand anything. Rika looked at Ina and nodded to her. Ina was very surprised and could not believe it. The girl calls the main character by name. The protagonist turns to the girl and sees her standing in front of him. Rika says that the magic sword is here. She points to her chest with her hands. The protagonist is very surprised when the girl tells him about the magic sword. Kiarina gets even angrier. She doesn't understand what's going on here. The protagonist's father and Aina look at the protagonist and Rika in surprise. Rekia comes close to him, and the main character asks if she really has the sword, and at the same time steps back. He is very surprised. Rika takes his hands in hers and says that everything is fine. The protagonist does not understand what she is talking about and what she means by everything is fine. The young man becomes embarrassed and begins to shake a little. Here Rika closes her eyes and then begins to glow with some incomprehensible aura. Everyone looks at her in surprise. Kayarna, in turn, smiles sarcastically. Rika says that she will give the main character her power. She takes a deep breath. The girl begins to emit a blinding glow even brighter. Suddenly the girl disappears and in her place appears a black and beautiful sword. The main character starts screaming while looking at the sword. At this point, Kirina smiles and does not understand what is happening. The protagonist's father screams in horror and asks if this girl really was a magic sword. Aina thinks intensely that Rika's sister was a magic sword all this time. The protagonist is surprised and tells Rika that she really is a magic sword. He couldn't believe his eyes. Suddenly, the protagonist hears the voice of a girl who asks him to use her as his power. The protagonist still doubts and asks if she is sure that this is a good idea. He approaches her in a panic. The girl in the form of a magic sword says that now is not the time to worry about this. The protagonist collects his thoughts and says that it is true. He starts to approach the sword. While he is collecting himself and picking up the sword, Kyrina says that it is interesting. She starts to laugh. The girl says that even though she was surprised, the main character should have known something. And then she continues and tells the boy that he should now use both swords in battle with her. The girl gets angry. She smiles and says that the young man had been acting like a real weakling before. The girl puts her fists together, warming up. The protagonist confidently answers that he understood her. Then he turns his gaze to the magic sword. The protagonist takes the black magic sword in one hand and the light sacred sword in the other. He says that since it happened this way, he will never lose to the girl. The young man puts both swords in front of him and looks at the girl with confidence. He shouts to his swords, Kana and Rika, and warns them to attack. At this moment, Kana turns around and does not understand as she was called, because she is still changing clothes. The girl is confused and lost. At this time, the elf girl sits at the table, laughs, watching everyone through a glass ball. The girl smiles and says that she does not understand what to do now. At the same time, Alicia is walking down the corridor dressed in a long white dress. A man calls the girl and asks her if she has urgent business. The girl awkwardly apologizes to him and is embarrassed. The girl turns around and says that the man should rest a little. The man is interested and asks if she doesn't feel well. He asks if they should call a doctor. She smiles charmingly, holding her hand to her chin. The man, looking at the girl, blushes. She tells him that there is no need to call a doctor because she is not at all ill. The girl smiles and says that she simply remembered a promise to a close friend. The man is surprised and does not understand what the girl is talking about. At this time, the protagonist and Kairina are fighting. They stand opposite each other and prepare to begin a deadly duel. Kairina smiles wickedly and asks the young man if he is not bored using only 2 swords. The protagonist smiles nervously. Sweat runs down his face and he says that he will not answer her that question. Suddenly, the protagonist hears Reika's voice, telling him to use the holy sword to defend himself. The protagonist looks at the black blade of the magic sword and imagines Reika's image. The protagonist replies out loud that he understands her. Here, Kairina immediately goes on the attack. She makes a dash and rushes at a furious speed straight to the protagonist, reducing the distance between them. The protagonist stays on his feet. He puts 2 swords right in front of him. The girl strikes with her dragon arm, but the protagonist blocks the girl's attack with a holy sword. Suddenly, the magic sword starts moving on its own, and the protagonist is very surprised. The protagonist attacks the girl with a magic sword, and she only smiles slyly and protects her neck with her dragon hand. She immediately strikes the sacred sword, and the protagonist is surprised. While the young man was fighting, he thought that for some reason he felt something strange, like the magic sword itself was guiding him. He made a series of attacks. Kairina enjoyed the fight. Suddenly, Reika tells the protagonist that it is because she is the one doing it that is directing the protagonist's blow. The girl says that the young man seems to be not against her actions. The protagonist is surprised and says that everything is exactly like that. The protagonist, proudly and with a big smile, thinks that this will allow him to focus on defense, and then it will confuse the enemy. He proudly exhales. Here, Kairina again declares that she is bored. The girl smiles and asks the boys if they really fight as one. Na puts her dragon arm forward. The protagonist gets scared and thinks that he has jumped to conclusions. Beads of sweat are running down his face. At this moment, Reika says in the protagonist's thoughts that he seems to be absolutely right. At this point, Kairina tells him not to worry and that she is not picking on him because she thinks it is much more interesting this way. At this point, the girl makes another lunge and attacks the young man. The protagonist's father watches the battle and says that this is why you shouldn't date those who live for battles. At this moment, the girl sitting next to him didn't listen to the man because she supports him and wishes her brother good luck. At this moment, the protagonist's father senses something. He turns around and sees a girl next to him, who smiles and asks the man if it is possible to discuss others behind their backs. The girl decides jumps down right next to the man. The protagonist's father is shocked and says that this simply cannot be. He asks if this is the moon demon Lurigardus. The girl smiles, placing her hands on her hips. Then the protagonist's father turns away and waves his hand at the girl to leave. He says that he was simply mistaken because the moon demon Lurigardus had a good figure. He apologized for being mistaken. The girl was annoyed. The girl starts to press her sight directly on the man. The girl asked the man if he wanted to have a rematch. The main character's father replies that he is afraid that he will get into trouble if he fights a high school girl. Suddenly, all the familiar girls appear and call the main character by name. The main character was very surprised by their appearance. Kairina angrily did not understand what was happening and where all these girls came from. The next moment, Malulu shouts that she has found Kairina. Kairina is surprised that even Malulu is here. Kairina turns angrily to the protagonist and says that these insects are going to interfere with them, so she orders him to finish as quickly as possible. She asks the young man to put all the strength he has into the fight. Then Malulu screams and asks who the insect is. She orders them to stop fighting immediately. The next moment, someone's side blocks her. The moon demon tells Malulu that if she interferes with them, who knows what will happen. The girl smiled sarcastically at that moment. Malulu turns around and is surprised to find a moon demon blocking her path. The protagonist himself also recognizes Ruri and asks if it is really her. Ruri smiles and asks the protagonist not to misunderstand her. She becomes awkwardly embarrassed. At this point, the protagonist looks questioningly at the girl and does not understand what she means. Ruri explains that she is here to deal with the others when the protagonist loses. The protagonist asks if she really thinks he will lose. Kairina is surprised that she doesn't quite understand, but Ruri likes her. The next moment, Kirina attacks and tells Ruri not to interfere with her in any case. At this moment, the protagonist thinks that thanks to Rika, he and Kirina can fight equally. In this case, he continues the fight with Kairena. At this point, the girls wonder if they really didn't come to stop Kirina. The girl starts crying and says that the moon demon is very scary. At this point, the girl is surprised that the holy dragon is afraid of the demon. The other girls think that Malulu is a dragon, and that she is some kind of good-for-nothing dragon. They did not even understand why they came here at all. Kirina attacks the protagonist and shouts that Yuma's movements are predictable, so he deserves it. At this moment, the girl smiled fiercely. The protagonist defends himself and asks, "So what?" He tries to withstand her barrage of blows. Kirina tells him at the moment of the battle that he still has 2 swords in his hands, so let him show her something tasty. At this moment, she attacks him with her tail. The protagonist puts the swords in a cross to protect himself from the blow. The protagonist fights and honestly admits that it is easy for her to say, but he thinks to himself that they definitely need a trump card. He looks closely at the dark magic sword. Reiki clenches his fists and tells the protagonist that everything is already perfectly clear, and the protagonist begins to get indignant that he is not talking about clarity now. Reiki tells him to attack with Kana, and the protagonist does not understand and asks if they really need her power. He puts the sacred sword forward. The protagonist turns and speaks to Kana. At this time, the girl was standing nearby and does not understand why Ruri is here at all. Ruri at this moment smiles and greets Kana. The protagonist interrupts their conversation. He calls Kana again. The girl is surprised and shudders a little. The protagonist asks the girl to lend him her power. Kana is very surprised and does not understand what is required of her. The protagonist turns to Kana and explains that he, she, and Rika will fight as a trio. Kana panics even more. She quickly exchanges glances and asks Ruri what she should do. Ruri turns his attention to the girl. Ruri puts her hand to her chin and thinks about it, then asks Kana what about the rays. Kana gets even more scared and asks again about these so-called rays. Ruri smiles and tells Kana to shoot beams from her uselessly huge assets. Kana blushes and cries out in tears that it's simply impossible. The next moment, she adds that if it is possible, then there will be holes in her clothes. Kana at this point began to blush. The protagonist's father stood behind her. The man said that it was not such a big problem. Kana calms down, then quietly says that then she will have to undress again. She is embarrassed to say this. The girl sighs and thinks that nothing can be done. The protagonist's father asks Kana not to take Ruri's words too seriously. At this time, Kairena and the protagonist continue to fight. The protagonist realizes that he needs to do something. He looks very tense. He clutches the sacred sword and realizes that it is becoming increasingly difficult for him to hold the swords with one hand. The protagonist thinks that he cannot give up and needs to use both swords at once. He crosses his swords and confidently declares his desire for them to become better. Suddenly, after these words of the protagonist, the swords and the protagonist himself begin to glow, so that they themselves are not visible behind a bright veil of light. Everyone looks at him in surprise. Karena gets angry and says that it is hard for her to watch, and the main character's father carefully closes Aina's eyes. The swords are combined, which is called Brave Devil. Now the main character has one huge sword. The main character is surprised, looking at his new weapon. Hiroina is shot, and the father of the main character is indignant. What a terrible name for an excellent sword. The main character himself stands and does not understand what to do now. He is so huge. The protagonist is surprised, then gathers himself and shouts that he is going forward. The protagonist jumps and swings his new huge sword, catching Kairna off guard. The girl clicks in anger and puts her dragon arms forward. Suddenly, the young man appears right behind the girl. Everyone looks on in surprise and waits for the result. Suddenly, Kairena asks again what kind of jokes this is again. The protagonist turns around in disappointment and asks if it didn't work again. He was very surprised. Suddenly, the young man sees that Kairen's demonic wings and horns are shrinking in size. The girl blushes sweetly and tells the protagonist that she forgives him for today. The protagonist stands there in bewilderment and then turns to her and sees her walking away, stumbling from side to side. The young man tries to tell her something, but he can't. At this moment, Kana looks for Ruri, and the protagonist's father asks her to get dressed quickly and holds back his gaze so as not to look at her. The man even became embarrassed. At this time, Kairina wanders along the street, where there are trees on the sides. She suddenly and with a sigh falls to her knees. She starts touching herself and says indignantly that something like this could happen to her. The girl is embarrassed and has no idea how to deal with such an ability of the young man. She starts to moan and cover her eyes, and Ruri suddenly appears from behind and laughs, saying that it seems that the protagonist's ability affects all of her sensitive areas. Kairina suddenly screams in fear. Ruri comes close to her and touches Kairina's legs. Kairina leans on her hands. Ruri says with a smile that this is still not the best ability. She looks at the embarrassed Kairina with a sly look. Ruri licks her lips and says that it seems like she has no choice, so she wants to help her. Kairina continues to scream and ask Ruri what she's doing, and Ruri calmly replies that she's just going to help her out down there. Kairina asks her to stop, but then she just lets out a groan. The elf Levian looks through the ball at Yuma and rejoices. She thinks that it was not the best ending, but it seems that he achieved his goal. Suddenly, something appeared next to the girl, attracting her attention. It was Alicia. The girl comes to the elf and asks how she liked the end of the fight. Levian smiles and replies that the end of the fight was not bad. She thought that the main character was in a hurry, but everything turned out fine, as she thinks. Alicia winks and says what else can you expect from him? Moreover, Levian adds that this is to fulfill their cherished dreams. They both say at the same time that all they need is to devote themselves entirely to the main character. At this time, the girls come up to the main character and say that he is a good boy. The princess approaches the protagonist and asks if he is okay. The protagonist still holds the sword in front of him and stands in thought. He himself did not understand how, but he succeeded the next time he fights. Here he does not finish. His whole sword disappears and splits into two normal ones. Rika tells the protagonist that she wants to return to her previous form, so he should remember to return the sacred sword to Kana. The protagonist obeys and replies, "Okay." Here he brings her clothes, flesh down to her underwear, and presents her sword and asks if this is okay. Rika tells him that he, in principle, did not need to do this. The hero shyly asks for forgiveness. Then the sword and clothes glow. The protagonist covers his eyes from the brightness. Then Rika appears without clothes and says that this is a straight-up fan service scene. The protagonist with red cheeks says that such fan service is good, but it is better to quickly get dressed. Rika stands up and says that fan service is important. However, the protagonist hands her clothes and asks if she really thinks so. She gets dressed. The main character suggests going back home. Then other girls stop him and tell him to wait. The main one approaches Rika and menacingly says that she is a magic sword. Rika tenses up and continues to stand in front of her. In an instant, she hugs Rika and asks if she wants to join their team. They are strong, and besides, rank doesn't matter to them. Then Malulu appears and shouts that they are cunning. She hugs Kana and shouts that then she will be on the team with her. Kana stands in surprise. The maids also don't understand and ask why she's even competing. Kokone says that Rika is now her younger sister. She agrees. The third asks not to forget about her. Then the girl says that she has more girls, so maybe they can fight. The princess says that she is always ready. The protagonist looks around and sees that Ruri is okay. But where is Ina? The protagonist sees their argument. At this time, the protagonist's father tells Ina that it's finally over and she was worried. He comes up to them and calls Ina. He asks her directly if Ina is also a demon. She gets scared, blushes, and says that now she is a human. The man smiles because only now. The protagonist asks if she is like Ruri, a former demon who became a human. Ina answers with the same red cheeks that it is possible. The father of the main character here suggests reincarnation, which greatly frightens Ruri. He begins to count how old she is, if 9 years old. Then that means Ina is very scared and wonders if he really found out about everything. Then the main character's father says sharply that no, that can't be. Ina looks at her calmly. Here the father of the main character asks if a demon who became a human would have such a small body with small forms. Ina hits her father with her small fists and asks what kind of obscenity this is. The protagonist's father laughs, and the protagonist says that this is definitely a crime. They all come out, several girls hanging on Rika in the back, Malulu and Yuma in the front. The protagonist addresses Malulu, who listens attentively. He asks her if she really didn't go after Karina. She awkwardly replies that she is with that demoness, and the protagonist thinks to himself, "Isn't she cute?" He asks her if she really thinks so. She laughs awkwardly and replies that she thinks so, and the princess does not understand why the sacred dragon is afraid of the demon. The next day, Yuma leaves the house. Before leaving, he tells his father that if Karina shows up again, he should let him know right away. Kana wishes him a good morning, and the protagonist's father sighs and wearily replies that he already understood everything. The protagonist says that he is going. The protagonist's father wishes him luck, and at this time the princess is sitting at the table again and enjoying the food, saying that the snacks are good. Here, the maid turns to Mrs. Alfie. The princess listens to her. She says that while they are cleaning the room, why doesn't she go for a walk, and Alfie asks if she is really disturbing them. Malulu turns to her and asks why she doesn't do some exercise. The princess gets up and says that if it's a walk, then she'll go for a walk. Malulu asks her if she will take Lilfi with her. She hesitantly replies that she does not mind. Alfie and Lilfi are walking down the street. Alfie happily says that they haven't walked like this for a long time. Everyone turns to look at them because of their clothes. Then Lilfi turns to her and says that, frankly, it's starting to bother her. She gets scared and asks if she's gained weight. Lilfi says no. That's not what she's talking about. She is afraid that if they continue to live in the same house, sooner or later, Mayfi's sister will come to them. Alfie immediately panics and screams for this to happen. She is not welcome here at all. Lilfi asks again if she really thinks so. Alfie replies that she is just too cute. The protagonist will fall in love with her at first sight. But she has an older sister, because Mayfi is the spitting image of an angel. Lofor starts to say that her life is simple for her. Then Alfie interrupts and asks if they are not like twins. They are 17 and 16 years old. Lofi sighs and agrees with her, saying that it is true. She thinks to herself that appearances do not matter when it comes to character. Then people, namely a woman with 2 children and a bald man, see Kairana walking towards them. Kirana blushes and apologizes for being late. They get worried and ask what happened. If she feels bad, then she should rest. She passes by faster and answers that this is not the case, and that she is fine. She blushes even more because she says that she just overexerted herself yesterday. She does not want to look them in the eye. They begin to wonder if she did something indecent. They themselves are covered with children and think about the youth. Alfie reports that they are back and that they have walked a lot and must have lost a lot of weight. Lilfi denies this, saying that they only walked for 30 minutes. Then a maid comes up to them and turns to Alfie. She says that a package from Queen Alicia has recently arrived. There is a large suitcase with an inscription that it is for Alfie from his mother. They all sit around the suitcase. Alfie wonders what it is, if it's mom's. She starts to open it and is surprised. She asks Lilfi if Mayfi is really here, and Lilfi asks tiredly if she thinks mom is a magician. Alfie replies that it is not so and is ashamed, and she tells her with a slight smile that she said it with such a serious face. She suddenly opens the suitcase and sees in front of her a leather accessory for the whole body. An awkward silence falls. Everyone looks on in surprise. She starts screaming in panic. Does her mother really think that she wears something like that? Why did she even send it to her? Lilfi asks if it could be a mistake, although that's basically how she wears it. One maid asked her why she shouldn't try it on. Another one nearby is indignant at the suggestion. Lilfi turns around and says that Platz is right, and Alfie turns around at these words. Lilfi says that if she refuses to wear it even once, then she should think about her mother. She blushes and agrees with her, saying that she is right. She decides to wear it and is glad that Yuma is not here. She puts it all on and says it doesn't suit her at all. She asks if it doesn't look exactly like Lavinia's uniform. Lilfi enjoys it and says it does look exactly like that. Then Lavi herself comes to them and asks what they are talking about, whether they called her. The princess shouts that they did not call, and in general, she should not look. Lavi looks at her and asks what she is doing. Alfie quietly turns to her. In a moment, she feels something and shudders. A dark atmosphere immediately emanates from her. Lilfi gets scared and calls her. Alfie doesn't answer and stands there with a languid look. Lavi smiles at her guess and says that she understands. Past the maid asks Lavinia what's going on. Alfie turns languidly to Lilfi who tugs at her and asks her sister if she's okay. Then they hug tightly. Lavi says that it is a cursed demonic thing. The protagonist who wears it becomes an incubus, and the maid does not understand and asks why they were sent it. Poor Lilfi trembles and moans in Alfie's arms. Lilfi looks at the others with great pleasure and says with a smile that she is sacrificing herself. So let them lift the curse quickly. Pats the maid says that Mistress Lilfi looks pleased. Another maid asks if they just need to take off the suit. She sees the clasps at the end. Lavi says she better not do that. The maid stops and turns with her, looking questioningly. Here Alfie turns and knocks the maid down. Holding her by the arms, she panics and doesn't know what to do. Lavi says that everything will be fine for her now, so it's better not to come closer. The maid under pressure screams that she should have told him earlier. Then Kokone and the others come in and hear screams calling for the princess. They see Kokone asking what she is doing. Has she hit puberty? And the other one doesn't understand why she is with the girls. Kokone says that training usually takes place with girls. The maid screams all red that this is not training. Kokone looks and makes a disgusted face. She says that they are in public. She screams that there is nothing like that. Berta the maid holds the princess's hands and trembles. She keeps shouting for Mrs. Alfie to wake up. Pats the maid watches from afar and thinks that maybe she, as a grown-up girl, needs to set an example. She thinks for a long time and then smiles at the thought that she won't. She'll leave all this to Bertha, so let her fight. Lilfi looks at her contented face from the side. Wilfie says that something should be done before Bertha the maid is disgraced. Lavi asks if she really thinks so. Alfie seems amused. One doesn't understand why Bertha, and not her. She thinks it's probably great. Kokone tells her she shouldn't because of the smell. Alfie rips off Bertha's maid's clothes while she's already panicking and angry, screaming at everyone to do something already. Bertha the maid screams at the princess to stop embarrassing her, and Alfie continues to touch her and press. While she tries to get out of her embrace and does not understand what she is doing, everyone else sits and watches them, dreamily watching and drinking tea. Lilfi says that firstly, her mother sent it to her, and secondly, she wonders where she got the demonic item. Lavi says that he finds it strange to send something like that to people, since darkness circulates in it. Cocoon says she bets it was bought overseas. Pats the maid asks how it came to this. Luffy says that, however, she doesn't think that Mom sent it by mistake. She doesn't need something like that. And the other one doesn't understand and asks what he means. Luffy smiles and says that Mom is still in her prime and that Mom is always very audible. Lobby looks and says, wow, and the other one looks awkwardly and says that she is a succubus. Here, Luffy starts to think, what if it was not for her sister, but for her? She starts to fantasize. Kokone says that she is also in her prime. She says that she will not deny it. Lavi adds that there is no need to deny it. Lavi adds that there is no need to deny it. Pats the maid asks to see. It looks like Bertha the maid is now in danger. Alfie pulls her underwear off. She tearfully asks her to stop. Kokone asks why they should worry about those with such huge bodies. Pats the maid says that is also true. Bertha the maid is indignant and shouts at Pats the maid that she is leaving her so easily. Pats the maid and Kokone turn away from them. Then the father of the main character comes to them and asks what is going on here and sees a picture of Alfie sitting on Bertha with laundry in her hands. Bertha the maid looking at him in panic. The protagonist's father hides and asks if maids are really punished like that. He also asks if he should probably leave. Bertha the maid screams that he hasn't understood everything. She asks him to help her. He says that if he interferes, she will then call him a fan of scientific and technological revolution and beat him up. Bertha the maid indignantly shouts, why does this bother him at all? Why would she call him that? Kokone says that it is really scary. The other says with special pleasure that she will kill him anyway. The father of the main character says that there is no choice then. He suddenly comes up to the princess from behind and hits her in the back of the head with his elbow. Alfie falls forward onto Bertha, who catches her and still calls her name. They remain in an embrace. Bertha the maid turns to Mr. Yuto and thanks him. The protagonist waves his hand and leaves, and they begin to take off their costume. Alfie ends up hanging from a rope in the same clothes, her eyes open, but empty. Her mouth is slightly open. Lilfi says it looks like it won't come off. Lavi says they might have to wait for the effects to wear off. Luffy asks how long it will take, and she replies that she thinks it will take about a day. Alfie looks at them. They stand awkwardly. Luffy says that means they'll just leave her here. Lavi agrees, and behind Kokone gets scared and asks them to wait. She asks what if they leave her hanging here and Yuma comes back. Her intuition tells her that's what will happen. They start to think. Eventually they both turn away. Luffy says that when he comes back, then they will think about it. Lavi agrees and says that it is true. Cockney says that they are just terrible. Then Lavi hears someone's voice calling her. She tells Luffy that she's going to the toilet and leaves. She gets up and asks what it is. Then a box falls from the ceiling on a rope and says that it is something from the mistress. It is the suitcase again, signed that it is for Lavi from Mom. She happily says, did something really come to her too? And they ask her if she should destroy it. Lavi asks, why is she like this? She decides to open it. She opens it and is enchanted by the contents. She immediately puts on this white elegant dress. She says that she looks good. She asks, is it true that she looks beautiful? But here she also feels something and shudders. At this time, the girls start eating again. Luffy says that Lavinia is taking a long time. Kokone says that maybe she went to the toilet. Then they hear a voice that apologizes for making them wait. Wavi stands in front of them in a dress and addresses Kokone. She shyly asks her not to say such bad things. Everyone is shocked by her appearance. Luffy asks who she is. Where did she get that dress from? They don't understand what it is. Berta the maid is indignant. Is this really that image again? Kokone is trembling behind. Everyone understands that there can be no mistake. Malulu shouts that this is the dress of the Holy Dragon Clan, also known as the scoundrel who wears it, will become a neat maiden. Yuta asks what kind of horrible name it is. Paps the maid happily says that it seems that these clothes do not harm them. Lavi looks around and goes to Alfie, who is still hanging. She looks up at her. Lavi touches Alfia's cheeks and calls her poor. She says that she will free her from these bonds, after which she kisses her on the cheek. Then suddenly the ropes break, and Alfia lands successfully. She is activated again. Everyone looks on in horror and doesn't understand what this is. Only Luffy watches all this in admiration and anticipation. Alfie turns to Bertha and then jumps up. The maids scream in horror that she is attacking again. Here Lavi stops her and tells her that this is not right. She hugs her and spins her around in a dance, saying that she has her. The maids blush and are even more confused about what is going on, and eventually Alfie and Lavi sit together and talk. Alfie turns to her and asks if such a sweet girl can be spoiled. She replies that it is not so, because it is not possible yet. Berta the maid looks on and says that they are two of a kind. Luffy looks at how they are having a nice conversation and starts thinking about something. Then she suddenly calls Yuto. The protagonist turns around. Luffy asks if they can film all of this. Yuto replies that it is not so, because they should not rely on such things. Luffy is surprised by the refusal. Suddenly Yuto says that it is better to imprint this scene in your heart. Luffy says that it is true. He is absolutely right. Berta the maid indignantly shouts at them to stop playing with it. At this time, Yuma, Kana, and Rika find themselves in some fenced field. A girl stands in front of them. Ruri wishes them well here. Kana asks her if she really wants to tell them something. The main character says that yesterday she followed Kairina. So what happened? She smiles slyly and answers to their surprise that it was quite tasty. The protagonist is awkwardly asked if this is really what the conversation will be about. Ruri replies that no, it seems like it's time to clarify something. The protagonist asks if she is talking about how when demons transform, their forms become smaller. He remembers how Aina screamed that she was still growing. Ruri screams that he and his father are simply killing her with this behavior. Rika touches herself and says that she has a big one. Ruri says, placing her hands to the sides, that she is speaking seriously. The protagonist looks at her questioningly. Ruri says that he wants to say that it was because of him that the sacred and magical swords were connected. Did he really decide to kill two birds with one stone? The protagonist says that it seems that Ruri is inadequate, and Rika says that Kana is a believer. Rika says that, for the sake of faith, she is ready to do anything. Kana, in a panic, says that it has nothing to do with it. The main character asks to wait and asks if he even has the right to choose. Ruri looks at them tiredly. Ruri pulls out her scythe and thanks everyone for letting her trick them. She smirks. She says that they are all here already. She asks if they are ready. She waves her scythe in front of her. The protagonist asks if it's really right here. Kana says sheepishly that they're not in that kind of relationship. Rika wonders if it's really the four of them. Ruri says that it seems like they misunderstood her. Later, after the conversation, the protagonist says that means she just wants to fight them. Ruri replies that that's exactly what she means. Kana says that this can't be done. She is their friend. Rika adds that she is their best friend, and Ruri replies that she doesn't like it. The main character awkwardly scratches the back of his head and says that it's nothing special, but only for 5 minutes, nothing more. Kana asks why not 3 minutes. Rika points and says she thinks 5 seconds is enough. Ruri asks if that's enough. What's going on? Then someone laughs loudly at them and asks if demons don't need friends. Ruri immediately gets into a fighting stance. There's a girl standing on the bars who says that May only hunts demons. This is the girl that Alfie and Lilfi were talking about, May. Ruri doesn't understand who she is. The protagonist wearily accepts that another girl has appeared. Kana thinks she's cute, and Reika asks if she's okay in the head, if she's really a magical girl. May shouts to let them meet the sorceress of love and justice, the sweet May from the world of magic and sword. Everyone looks on in shock. Rika is disappointed, and Kana smiles and is happy that she really is a sorceress. At this time, Alfie and Lavi are still hugging each other. Berta the maid tensely asks what they are doing. Luffy replies that they are enjoying each other, so she suggests that they not interfere. Berta the maid says that nothing good will come of it. Here, Alfie turns sharply and stands up. She looks at him carefully, and then quietly says that she has arrived. Lavi calls Alfie by name. She stands silently, and then enthusiastically shouts that May has arrived. Alfie turns to Lavi, who, with a calm smile, anticipating her words, says that she understands her. Alfie and Lavi go outside like this. Luffy looks at them and only calls her sister. Lavi gets light wings. She hugs Alfie. Kokoni comes out to them in horror and screams. Alfie and Lavi fly away into the sky hugging each other. Berta the maid also comes out and screams to the princess. Kokoni is also panicking nearby. Lilfi indignantly asks what kind of clothes are these. Malulu thinks about how to tell her. She says that saints have angel wings, but she didn't know that you can actually fly on them. How cool is that? The others are also surprised by this news. Lilfi shouts that they need to catch up no matter what. Malulu asks how they will catch up if they flew away. Kokon asks them if they forgot that dragons can fly. Malulu asks in shock what she is talking about. Luffy admits that they really forgot, and Pats the maid says, "What kind of stupid girls are they?" At this time, the protagonist and the girls are still standing on the roof, and May is standing on the grate with her magic wand. Ruri says that whether she's a sorceress or a sweetheart, if she wants to fight, then let her fight. May says, addressing them, that they, demons, are so impatient. Ruri prepares her weapon and says that it is better to be impatient than boring like her. May asks if she wants to entertain her too. The protagonist looks at her questioningly and thinks that she is a princess of magicians. He wonders if this is Alfie's sister. May suggests that they start already. She jumps from the grate. Her wand instantly turns into a weapon with a sharp blade. She has a holy magic axe. May and Ruri clash in a fight. May attacks, and Ruri defends herself with her scythe and leans with all her strength. The protagonist is horrified. Kana watches the fight with great pleasure, and Rika says that this is not magic, but a physical blow. Ruri smiles and thinks that despite her appearance, she is quite strong. May tells her that if she does not fight seriously, one hit will be enough for her. Ruri says it's great. She's all trembling with pleasure and says she's looking forward to it. The protagonist thinks to himself that they need to be stopped. Then Kana turns to him and asks what they will do. Maybe he will use the sacred sword. Rika says that she herself has already started to offer. Does she really like it? And she, in a panic, says that she does nothing like that. Rika also turns to the main character and says that she is also ready to be a magic sword while she lowers her gaze. Kana screams how horrible this is. Even Kana likes it. Rika says she doesn't deny it, and the protagonist says that it would be better if she denied it. Then he feels something and looks up. He wonders if someone is coming towards them. He sees Alfie flying towards them and shouting Mei's name. She lands suddenly with a big bang. Here Ruri and Mei stop and are distracted from the fight, because something landed on them. It is Alfie standing, or rather sitting on one knee in front of them. Mei says in surprise that this can't be. Is this really Alfie's sister? Alfie looks up and calls Mei's name again, causing drool to come out of her mouth. She straightens up. The smoke disappears. Mei screams that she realized that she is a monster, masquerading as Alfie. Even Ruri is shocked at the realization that it is a monster, masquerading as Alfie. Here in the sky on a dragonfly, Kokone. Maids. Berta, maid and Pat's maid. And behind them Lilfly. Kokone asks if this Mei is there. Lilfy yells at Mei to be careful, because this isn't her older sister yet. Bertha the maid gets tired of her behavior. Then Alfie jumps and hugs Mei. Mei holds a weapon in her hands and tells herself to chop everything that stands in her way. Her axe turns into a holy magic sword. She swings it straight at Alfie, who is flying towards her. Here, all the clothes with the curse are torn. Alfie is freed and comes to his senses. She examines herself. She screams in horror. Why is she naked at all, and why only her? Kokone says that this is the role she was given, and the other says that if her role is to be naked, then she wants it too. Mei stands with her wand and says that she got away with it. She turns to Lilfy and says that if she hadn't heard her sister's voice, she would have cut her in half. The protagonist asks Lilfy what is going on, what happened at home. Lilfy is awkwardly silent and does not know what to say. Mei hugs Lilfy and tells the protagonist not to talk to her little sister, and Lilfy tells Mei that it's rude. She says this guy is a hero. Mei looks at him and says that's true, but she doesn't care. Poor Alfie sits awkwardly and asks if anyone has any clothes. Kokone says that if he needs clothes, he should take them from her, hinting at Malula. She will simply turn into a dragon. Malulu smiles and says that after she undresses, she will definitely attack Kokone. Kokone, in fear, asks if she really hurt her. One suggests that maybe they can take off Lobby's clothes too. She's still standing innocent and calm next to them. Kokone says that they never tried. She completely forgot. Lilfy says that at least Lobby is unharmed. Kokone tells her friend that she will let her take off her clothes so she can come with her, but she refuses and says that they will change the goal a little. She starts to take off her clothes and says that she can do it. Kokone says that she can't because her clothes smell. She changes her mind. Lobby hears them and asks if she really needs to take off her clothes. The protagonist asks to wait. If she needs clothes, she will just give her sports uniform. Ruri asks him to wait. The protagonist stops. Ruri searches for something in her pocket and finds it. She throws it and tells him to use it. Alfie holds a small spotted ball in his hands and looks at it in surprise. She doesn't understand and asks what it is. The protagonist is indignant at Ruri, and you smile slyly while Alfie screams. Then Alfie finds himself in underwear with a picture of a cow. She asks what kind of shameful outfit this is. Reika asks if it's the season for such outfits. Kana doesn't understand her and asks what season. The protagonist asks Ruri if this is her battle uniform too. She gets indignant and says that it's in demand. Lobby stands there without clothes and says that she can just take her clothes off herself. Malulu is horrified at what she is doing. Lobby says that she was about half conscious because she met Nori. They are surprised by Nori. Ruri asks what's wrong. Isn't he the Demon King? Does she think he can surprise her? Lobby says he represents the Demon King, and the only Demon King they have is Yuma. Everyone is shocked and doesn't understand what she just said. The main character is surprised himself. Mei comes up to him and asks if his brother isn't a hero. Did he really deceive her? She looks at him menacingly. The protagonist begins to speak hesitantly, not knowing how to say it. Alfie stops them and asks them to calm down and talk. The protagonist and Mei doubtfully say that she can talk seriously in such a costume. That is, in underwear with a cow pattern. Alfie gets hysterical and screams that it is not her fault. At this time, Ina comes to their house with a backpack and apologizes in advance for the disturbance. Yuto is sitting on the floor and reading a book. Seeing Ina, he greets her. She is surprised and asks if only Uncle Yuto is here. The protagonist replies that this is true. He doesn't know where the others are. They flew away. She laughs, sits down next to him and says that means they are alone. Ina starts to get nervous and wonders to herself what she's even talking about. Yuto's displeased gaze pierces her. and he says her name with some disgust. He asks her if she really wants to play house with her as a mistress, if this is really a common thing in Finland. She screams in panic that, of course, there are a lot of mistresses there. Yuto smiles and says that he didn't know that. Aina silently begs for forgiveness. Then someone else comes to them and asks for forgiveness for interrupting them. Levian and Alicia stand in front of them. Alicia smiles and says that they haven't seen each other in a long time, calling him a former hero. Levian asks him accusingly what he's playing with a little girl. Yuto is surprised where they came from. Aina sits awkwardly. Yuto says that can't be. Did they come to him to find out which part of them is the best? Aina looks at him with displeasure. Alicia tells him with a smile that he hasn't changed at all. Levian adds that he only has better taste now. Yuto says that unfortunately, the only girl he's ever loved is Grisaria, so he doesn't want to be pressured by hotties like them. Aina turns to him in surprise. She lowers her head and starts to seethe. Levian turns his attention to her. Aina blushes even more. Levian tells Alicia that he is annoying them somehow. Maybe they will kill him. Alicia says that would be nice, but he needs to calm down first. Yuto gets scared and asks, how is that nice? Levian says he'll tell her just in case. He's not interested in his son-in-law at all. If he takes something from his sister, she'll immediately return in a different form. Yuto says he'd like that to happen. And Aina already lives in a different form. Yuto finally asks them why they came. Alicia and Levian are surprised as if they did not expect such a question. Levian remembers, points at Ina, and says that they came for her. Ina is surprised. At this time, Lavi stands and asks if it is not suspicious that the clothes were sent at the same time. Alfie agrees. Mom has always been weird, so she never even thought about it. Pats the maid agrees and says that she always has, really. At this point, Alfie asks if this means their mothers are in cahoots. Lilfi and Lavi turn to her. They are surprised by this guess. Alfie stands and does not understand, and Lilfi is trembling all over, because her sister said something wise. She starts screaming. Has she been brainwashed? May readies her gun again and says that she must not be real. Where did she put her? Alfie screams that they are her sisters. What are they doing? Malula is thoughtfully asked for what purpose they could do that. Bertha the maid asks, maybe so that the hero would see their other side. Pats the maid, says that they are just like a couple. Maybe it wasn't a mistake at all. Lavi says that they don't really want to hang around here all day. Maybe they can go and have kids. Lilfi says that, since it comes down to it, she doesn't mind. Alfie screams at them in shock that they can't do something like that. Lilfi takes her hands and says that it's true. She shouldn't deprive her of her love. The protagonist turns to Lilfi and asks if she could stop talking about it so calmly. Lavi says that if it bothers him so much, then he can join. The protagonist shouts to her that this will all end very badly. Malulu asks if she can join. Lavi also asks if she can. Kokon says she has a specific smell, so she will be after Lavinia. May asks why Tikni doesn't want to join. Lavi replies that it's because it's easier for him to stay here. Kokoni adds that they themselves are delicious. Malulu says that she is just starting to figure it all out. And they ask her what she is doing here. Lofi turns to May and asks if her mother knows she is here. Then their conversation is interrupted by a voice, asking them to wait. Alfie shouts at them not to send May back until she has fully enjoyed herself. She's asked to at least keep quiet for a while. May says that it seems like Mom said that she would come soon too. Lilfi is surprised. May remembers what she said. It seems like she said that she would come with a friend. She says that she thinks her friend's name is Levian. And then Lavi twitches, because she says that this is her mother. Kokon screams for them to come back quickly, or else something bad will happen. Everyone turns to her in fear. Lilfi says that maybe it's too late, so they need to hurry. The protagonist doesn't understand and asks, what is it? The protagonist asks Kokone if it's bad when both mothers come. She replies that they have huge forms, something will probably happen. She repeats that they are huge, and the protagonist says that he doesn't quite understand what's wrong. Then someone calls them. Malulu in dragon form asks if they can sit on her. Lilfi is standing nearby. Meanwhile, in the bathhouse, Alicia and Levian are enjoying the water, and Ina is suffering between them. Alicia says they will wait until their daughters return. Levian agrees because he doesn't think he can pay for it all. Ina starts to say that she has nothing to do with them at all. Levian asks what she's talking about. An awkward silence follows. Ina screams in panic. Did they really notice? And Levian asks, shouldn't she have noticed? She asks who Ina thinks she is. She is the older sister. And the log still hasn't noticed, even though they've been together for so long. Ina stands up abruptly and asks her not to tell Yuto about this. She says that she won't tell. She doesn't understand why she should try to please him. Ina sighs with relief and sits back in the water. Levian looks at her and begins to walk behind her, hugging her. She says that Ina has become so cute, it is hard to resist the urge to take her home. Alicia admires her too, but Ina splashes water and asks not to do that. Lavi arrives home and stands in front of Alicia, Levian, Ina, and Yuta, who are sitting at the table drinking tea. She asks if this means they are just relaxing. Levian smirks and asks her what she expected. Kokon and Lavi look at everything carefully. Lavi says that she thought they would have a fight here. Kokon tells Lavi that this is not right. Lavi asks her daughter if this is what she wanted. She sits down next to her and says that it is. She likes to give her a dressing down. She is glad that she came. Kokoni is surprised that she threw it all away so easily. Alicia says that if Levian starts taking this world seriously, it will be quite funny. Yuto is indignant. If she understands that, then why did she come? Alicia is offended and tells Yuto that he is so heartless. Does he really not love her anymore? Yuto rudely replies that he never loved her, and the demand for married women is not high. Alicia asks, but he likes big forms. The protagonist falls silent. Alicia says that now that the former demon king is dead, she is the strongest, right? Yuto blushes and says that she is rather the curvier. Then Alfie comes in and yells at his mother. What is she doing here? Alicia replies that she is just joking like a human being. Lilfi sees and says that she does not think so. Here Levian announces that her forgotten nephew Yuma has arrived. She hugs him from behind. The protagonist gets scared and doesn't understand where she came from. The main character asks her if she's Lavi's mother. She replies that she is, but wants to say that she could have a lot of fun with him and leave offspring. The main character gets scared and tries to escape. Lavi tells his mother that dad will cry. Alicia stands up and says how cunning Levian is. She wants it too. Then Luffy abruptly takes her hand away and looks menacingly at her mother. Luffy yells that she got this behavior from her, so she should stop it. Alfie is shocked, thinking that she said it. She said it herself, and May is happy, because she doesn't really understand everything. Yuto yells to stop. She's just a spoiled girl, so let him sort everything out. They all sit down, Yuto asks, holding a notepad and pencil in his hands, if it's right that they want both sides to be with Yuma. He says that as long as she has the magic sword and the holy sword, it sounds quite realistic. Alicia says that Yuma can't be divided into two, so all that's left is to wait for grandchildren. The protagonist replies that he understands. Both mothers nudge their daughters and say that each of them has at least one child. Alfie and Lavi blush. The protagonist asks to wait and says that this is not possible because they ignore their own feelings. An awkward silence falls. Everyone looks questioningly at Yuma. Luffy starts to wonder if he's really starting to develop heroic feelings. Kokone starts to wonder if he's really starting to develop heroic feelings. He's seriously starting to act like a hero. Kana thinks that his feelings also have a limit. Raika is surprised that he said it so openly. The protagonist asks in shock why they are so surprised. Did he say something wrong? Rura says that it is clear without words. Alfie and Lavi look at each other with satisfaction. Alfie says that since it happened this way, Lavi finishes by saying that he should use his power. Then they both rush to hug Yuma. Kana and Raika also hug. Kokone joins them. Lilfi, Rura, Ina, May, and Yuto watch them from the sidelines. Yuto and Ina dreamily call them youth. One day, 7 years later, Ina comes home as an adult and greets Yuta. Yuta also greets her. She asks him if the protagonist hasn't arrived yet. Yuta replies that he will be there any minute. Then a magic circle appears above them. Yuto says that it looks like he came to them. Something sparkles very brightly. Ina and Yuto look there. The main character appears and says that he is home. He is not standing alone, but with him are Lavi and Alfie, who are holding one child each, and the protagonist himself is holding 2 babies. They are all very small. The protagonist sees the other girls, who are with their children. He says that as he sees it, the others are here too, including his children. Kokon has a daughter, Kana has 2 boys, and Rika has a boy and a girl. Yuto tells his son that his reproductive power is astounding. He even envies his son a little,